My name's Jack Collins, and I'm a private investigator. I live on a rundown sailboat in Harbor Ridge Marina in Los Angeles, and I'm broke. If I were a wizard like that other Merlin, I'd conjure up a paying client this very minute. My last girlfriend dumped me because I was broke. That was 4 very lonely celibate months ago. As a kid, my dad made up bedtime stories about me being a private eye living on a yacht called Seabreeze and flying all over the world solving crimes with my 4 dogs, Duke, Shadow, Rocky, and Scout. I trained service dogs for autistic children on weekends for free. I gathered up my 4 ferocious attack guard dogs, Duke, Shadow, Rocky, and of course Scout. They're chihuahuas, but very ferocious chihuahuas. I call them the Wild Bunch. I waved hello to Ava Reed, the incredibly beautiful blonde who lived on a 40-foot sailboat next to my boat and sometimes on my boat. She moved into her boat slip the same day a large trawler named the Honor moved into a slip across from us. She'd been my neighbor for about a week. Forget the Maltese falcon, she was the stuff that my dreams were made of. One night during a massive thunderstorm, she came onto my boat crying, wearing only a soaked nightgown. She was petrified by thunder and lightning. It reminded her of the artillery fire in her native country when she was a young child and still frightened her. The first thing I saw were her long, amazing legs that went all the way up and stopped at her waist. One was flesh and bone, the other was a high-tech prosthetic leg. I had seen the chest of a lot of women. Unfortunately, they were on the internet. Hers were the most perfect chest I'd ever seen up close in real life. As she stood next to me, I held and kissed her chest, and in less than 30 seconds, I was madly in love with her. She turned up my stereo to drown out the thunder, then she jumped into my bed and gave me the most passionate night of my life. I was astounded that a chest that perfect was natural. In the morning, the storm departed, and so did Ava. Thank goodness there was another thunderstorm that week. Ava returned to my boat and me, but this time, after the storm, she didn't leave. She was now my girlfriend, at least in my mind, and I was the happiest destitute private eye on earth. She loved to sing show tunes and had a beautiful voice with an adorable, thick Southern accent. I lived in a perpetual Broadway show, and I loved it. My looks rated no better than a 5, while she was most definitely a 10. In the back of my mind, I was afraid that our relationship couldn't last very long. Occasionally, Ava had to travel for business. I feared she had another lover, but I was too scared to know for sure, so I never investigated. Some private eye I was. I knew I would end up like Elvis Presley did in Heartbreak Hotel if I asked her questions, and besides, I was afraid of the answers. One morning, Ava and I walked my dogs down the Venice boardwalk past stoners and an endless assemblage of druggies, drunks, deadbeats, and other assorted losers, my friends and peers, in other words. The Santa Ana wind picked up its litter, flew through the air. Blockade, a 300-pound black man, wore a green sequin suit topped by a green derby hat. He gave hula hoop lessons as he sang along with his karaoke machine. Blockade had an amazing singing voice. Every so often he burst into opera. His absolute mirror-perfect imitation was of Paul Robeson singing Old Man River. He saved that for the very end of his show because it always brought down the house and brought in some big tips. Sometimes Ava sang along with him, and that drove the crowd wild because she sounded like Julie Andrews, but with a thick Southern, not English accent. Business was slow. The crowd was small and unenthusiastic. He called out to me, pretending we didn't know each other. I acted like a ringer to bring in a crowd. "Man, this Santa Ana is killing my sinuses," he whispered to me and Ava as she took my dog's leashes, and Blockade handed me an oversized hula hoop. I did a few revolutions to the amusement of the crowd of German and Chinese tourists. Then the hoop dropped below my knees, and I fell over. I was a laughingstock, but Ava and the crowd cheered and applauded my effort. "AWOL," I whispered to Blockade. AWOL means always west of Lincoln Boulevard, which means you live in the Marina or Venice and all that that implies. We were an eclectic assortment of penniless losers and multimillionaires who coexisted barely. "AW, right back to you," Blockade replied as he and I fist-bumped. The unmistakable aroma of marijuana wafted through the ocean breeze from Dr. Green's storefront cannabis clinic. Again, Blockade persuaded me to demonstrate my lack of hula hoop aptitude, or as he called it, hooped. I almost had the damn hoop rotating when 2 gunshots rang out in Dr. Green's marijuana clinic 10 feet from me. I turned around as 2 skinny, shaved-head white guys with snake tattoos and swastikas on their arms burst out of the clinic door, knocking over Ava and plowed straight into me. Skinny robber number 1, who wore a Clippers t-shirt, and I fell onto the hot pavement. Before I could even give the attack command, my 4 chihuahuas attacked Clipper's ankles and kept him down. Then Duke went for his throat. He didn't tear it out, he just clamped his jaw on the guy's throat. Clippers tried to get up, but he had a dog attached to his throat, 2 more on his ankles and 1 clutching his groin. His left leg was hooked up in my hula hoop, and we both fell forward again. He dropped his 9mm Sig Sauer semi-automatic pistol and smashed his face against the concrete pavement. The hula hoop trapped me on top of him. His backpack went flying onto the ground. A strong gust of Santa Ana wind picked up dozens of Ben Franklins, and they swirled around like a green tornado before falling onto the sand. When I had put out my hand to break my fall, my hand landed on his gun, which was pointed at his face. "Don't shoot me, please! I give up!" He screamed at me as the barrel of the gun in my hand serendipitously pressed up against his bleeding nose, and Duke growled as he held a vice-like grip around the guy's throat. I was more shocked than he was and wasn't sure what to do. I hadn't been in a fist fight since the one I lost in 7th grade, but in my defense, she was a foot taller and 5 pounds heavier than I was. I'm not a tough guy. I gave my dogs the release command. My dogs circled Clippers, growling at him. He was more scared of my dogs than my gun. Blockade knocked down the other robber with a right fist so fast that I hadn't even seen it move. Number 2 rocketed back about 40 feet, as if he'd hit a Star Trek-like force field. Simultaneously, Ava saw that I had a gun on one guy, and she stood over the other robber and shoved the barrel of a snub-nosed .38 Colt Cobra into his face. I didn't know that she packed a gun. This woman was just full of surprises. Blockade gathered up the money and relieved me of Mr. Sig Sauer's favorite 9mm. Then he handcuffed the person. The 3 of them walked into the clinic, and I heard the 2 highwaymen scream in pain. I walked away quickly. I was feeling an adrenaline high better than from any coffee ever brewed. For the first time in a long, long time, I felt good about myself. Blockade walked over to me, and I saw blood on his green sequin suit. It wasn't his blood. Man, crazy happens when the Santa Anas blow. I never pegged you for a tough guy. The boss says thank you and wants you and your dogs to have this. Blockade handed me $400. That would pay a lot of overdue bills. Boss? You work for Dr. Green? I asked. You think I'm out there singing for my health? I saw the way you wrestled that thief to the ground and grabbed his gun. You're brave and quick thinking. You're totally AWOL. That's why I love you, Ava said, then smiled at me, hugged me, and kissed me. This reward was better than the Medal of Honor. I didn't want to spoil the mood, so I didn't ask why she packed a gun. I wasn't anywhere near as brave or AWOL as Blockade and Ava thought, but I chose not to correct them. Ava grabbed my hand, and almost running, she led me back to my boat. When you aimed your gun at that guy, I was so turned on. I wanted to rip off your clothes then and there. For the rest of the day and most of the night, Ava demonstrated her appreciation of me in bed. She did things to me I had never before even imagined. Based on her moaning and screaming, she enjoyed our time together as much as I did. I was afraid this was all a dream, a wet dream, the greatest wet dream in history, but it was real. The next morning on my boat, Rocky, a 3-month-old 5-pound Chihuahua, sauntered over to Tommy Jr., a 7-year-old sandy-haired autistic boy. Tommy Jr. had been staring at the refrigerator in the cabin of my boat for the past 5 minutes. He stared at it with total concentration, but without emotion. Rocky licked Tommy Jr.'s face through the helmet that the child had to wear. Tommy's father stared at Ava, who stood on the deck of her boat. For a moment they locked eyes, and I thought they knew each other, but I decided that he, like every other man, looked at Ava just because she was beautiful, though Ava did seem to look knowingly at Tommy Jr.'s father. I guess that was understandable since he was a handsome man. Tommy's father's cell phone buzzed. I was angry that he hadn't shut it off because the noise might distract Tommy Jr. His father was busy texting and not paying attention to his son. I looked through the peephole and saw that, coincidentally, Ava was texting with someone. It struck me as strange that as they looked at their texts, they both laughed at the same time. Tommy Jr. turned away from the refrigerator and tried to make sense of Rocky. Rocky licked Tommy Jr.'s nose. Jr. softly touched Rocky's nose with his nose. I gently took Tommy Jr.'s hand and stroked Rocky's head. Tommy Jr. got the idea and continued petting the dog. Rocky felt safe with Tommy Jr. and curled up in his lap. Tommy Jr. felt safe with Rocky. I had spent an hour a day for the previous week holding Rocky and allowing Tommy Jr. to acclimate to the dog's presence. Tommy Jr. didn't smile, but neither did he scream or smash his head against anything, his usual method of communication. For the first time in his life, Tommy Jr. was voluntarily relating to another living being. Tommy's father, Judge Kenneth Hale, softly said, "Judge Hale hugged me so hard that my ribs were about to crack. All the experts, all the doctors, all the time, all the money, a lot of money, a damn fortune. It just took a puppy and someone like you, Jack. I will never forget what you've done for my son. This is the first time he's interacted with a living being. You've rescued him from the valley of the shadow of death." The judge wiped tears from his eyes. "This is the happiest day of my life since I graduated from Yale Law School." The judge twisted the Yale ring on his finger. "My wife and I are eternally grateful. I guess that none of the doctors or scientists grew up with an autistic brother. I saw the change that came over my brother when we adopted a golden retriever named Rusty. We rescued Rusty and she rescued my brother. Jack, if you ever need help, or if you ever need a friend or legal advice, or if you're ever in a jam, call me. I'm a federal judge. I'm a good friend for a private detective to have. Here's my cell phone number and home address. Remember, any time, night or day." The judge's son hugged me and brought me back to reality. That hug meant the world to me. When Judge Hale and his son left, I saw him look at Ava, and she looked back at him and nodded. I love dogs, and they love me. I understand dogs, and they understand me. I love women, but I don't understand them, and by and large, they have no interest in me. Aside from the fact that I'm short, average-looking, and broke, I think I'm a great catch for the right woman. I'm loyal, loving, kind, and fiercely protective. When a woman wants loyal, loving, kind, and fiercely protective, she buys a dog and pays me to train him. Then the dog gets to sleep on her bed with his head on her chest, the lucky scumbag. I can do that too, and besides, I'm already housebroken. But now with Ava, everything had changed. I didn't understand why, and I didn't care why. I no longer felt like a loser. It was another beautiful day in Harbor Ridge. Ava Reed, my gorgeous blonde girlfriend, sat sunbathing on her yacht. She waved to me as I climbed back onto my boat. I was so distracted that I slipped on the wet swim step. My right leg sank into the water up to my knee. I cursed at my clumsiness. I have an aversion to submersion. I pulled myself out of the drink and walked down into the cabin to dry off. As a rule of thumb, the more beautiful the woman, the bigger the boat she tends to have. Some women care only about the size of a guy's dock. Ava was gone on one of her mysterious business trips for several days. I played Bob Marley music, picked up my ukulele, and played along with Bob for close to 10 minutes. Together, Bob Marley and I sang Three Little Birds, One Love, and more. I sang the first line of Waiting in Vain inside my boat, and outside the boat, I heard Ava's beautiful voice singing the second line in response. I was speechless. I didn't know she had returned. She continued singing a few more bars. "Ahoy! Is anyone on board?" The singing woman with a sensual southern accent sang out, transporting me from my tropical reverie and back to reality. I climbed up the steps from the galley to the cockpit to greet her. I continued my upward gaze at the long blonde hair that flowed down from her head and also stopped at her tiny waist. She had a body that just wouldn't quit. I had to lean against the captain's chair because she made my knees weak. "Darling, you play a mean ukulele. I wish you could have accompanied me when I was singing and dancing in Miami just after I graduated from Yale Law." But before my car accident, she pointed to her artificial leg. She gave me one of those southern comfort kisses that rocked my world. She pulled back her shoulders to accentuate her chest so she could be sure I noticed them. Hell, they were all that I had thought about for the past month. She needn't have worried that I'd miss them, or the open buttons on her clingy silk dress that revealed an immodestly tantalizing view of only partially hidden treasures. I wondered if she was a devil in a blue dress. I hope you can help me professionally. I desperately need to hire a private investigator who knows his way around a boat, she said in a breathy Marilyn Monroe kind of voice, and you are obviously my man. Oh my goodness, would I love to always be her man. However, I knew I couldn't afford her for much longer. I don't really know the cost of women's clothing, but even I could tell that her shoes, her tailored outfit, and her jewelry cost more than a townhouse in Beverly Hills, more than I could ever afford to buy for her. She was exponentially out of my price range. She was the kind of woman Jim Morrison sang about in L.A. Woman. Jim Morrison was immortalized on a wall a few blocks from me. Walking past it every day reminded me to beware of a certain type of L.A. woman, this kind of L.A. woman. She handed me her small dog, a toy poodle with a red rhinestone collar, and extended her hand so that I could help her onto my boat. Her long, elegant fingers ended in gold-painted fingernails. Her hand had an ethereal softness. I didn't imagine they'd ever done any manual labor or even touched dishwater. I didn't want to let go of her hand, but I did when her dog bit my other hand. "Ouch!" I screamed as her dog started yapping. "Butterscotch," she said as she looked straight into the face of her dog. He held his head low in shame. My dogs heard the barking and ran up onto the deck from down below. I called them the Wild Bunch. Duke, Shadow, Rocky, and Scout started barking their collective heads off. They're loud, even for Chihuahuas. "How was your trip?" I asked. "In addition to being your girlfriend, I'm a divorce lawyer representing a husband whose wife stole his boat." I stopped listening. She said she was my girlfriend. I hugged her, but she withdrew from me. "First business, then pleasure," she said. "It's a 50-foot trawler. It's named the Honor, and it's usually docked right across from us." She pointed to the vacant slip 100 feet away. "The boat is his sole and separate property, and I want to hire you to find it and return it to him." I sat down on one of 3 benches in the cockpit. Ava sat down next to me, practically on top of me. Ava put her hand on my arm and rubbed it in a semi-predictable diamond, an emerald, a ruby, and a Yale-class ring with a sapphire. She was expensive. Most women in Los Angeles were expensive. I knew she was lavishly expensive. I mean, she lived on a yacht. I feared that eventually she would leave me for a guy with money, a lot of money. You lead such an exciting life. You're handsome. You live on a boat. You deal in danger. Most of the men I deal with are going through a divorce. They're whipped and beaten. They aren't the kind of men I can look up to. They aren't like you. That's why I'm with you. I smiled as I looked deeply into her totally hazel eyes. Ava was the biggest liar I'd ever met, but I loved listening to her fabulous fabrications about me. As she rubbed my arm, her hand was still on my arm. This was not just my imagination. I didn't know what game we were playing, but I was winning. I mean, who doesn't like to be flattered and stroked? I just wished I were dumb enough to believe her. She was clearly the most exciting woman I'd ever met. You never talk about your cases. I've had my share of close calls. It's just part of the game, but I've been lucky. The tall tale I told should have embarrassed me. I would say or do anything to please this woman, and she knew it. In order to systematize an incremental capability, I'll need to see the ownership papers, some photos of the boat, its registration numbers when it was stolen, and any idea you may have on where it is, I asked without ever taking my eyes from hers. I had no idea what it meant to systematize an incremental capability, but I had learned to say things like that when I didn't know the answer. That gobbledygook impressed people and cowed them into submission. I hoped it would have the same effect on Ava. "You sound very efficient, very take charge. I feel confident that you're not just a great lover, but a great detective." Ava smiled at me with an intensity that started a fire inside me. She called me a great lover. I could now die a happy man. She opened an expensive brown leather Hermes attaché case and handed me a file folder filled with everything I had asked her for and more. Why don't you call the police or the Coast Guard? Because this is a civil matter. They wouldn't care. Before I get started, we should discuss my fee, I started to say. Ava crossed her legs and uncrossed them, showing a lot more thigh than most women would want to show to a man unless she was dancing on a pole. She wasn't wearing panties. I enjoyed the show, but I couldn't push the song Waiting in Vain from my mind. Eventually I did, but it was replaced with Is This Love? Ava removed an envelope from Mr. Hermes, opened it, and counted out 4,100 bills. This should cover your immediate expenses. I'll pay you 3,000 more when you return the boat to my client. I was hoping to get 500 total, so I was overjoyed, but tried not to show it. That money would be the next back payment on my student debt. The rest I would gladly spend on Ava. The boat was taken about 5 or 6 hours ago. Here are the keys to the boat. I assume they're headed to Mexico since that's 300 miles away, and the boat can only travel at 7 miles an hour. You have plenty of time to catch them, so we might as well enjoy ourselves for a while. Ava dangled the keys in front of me as if she was trying to hypnotize me. She kissed me, then she unbuttoned her blouse. The loving was incredible. Even though I didn't trust this woman, I did lust after her and was halfway in love with her. No, that's not true. I was head over heels in love with her. I thought that was her plan. I didn't know why, and I didn't care why. From the moment I met her, my brain told me she was trouble, but I didn't care. For just an instant, blood returned to my brain, and I realized that she wasn't just trouble, she was dangerous. Then she rubbed me between my thighs, and the blood again left my brain, and I stopped thinking. After 2 more go-rounds, she said, I really needed that. Here's my card with my cell number. Call me any hour of the night or day when you find the boat. There was only 1 battery bar showing. I'd have to remember to charge it. When I recover your boat, where do you want me to take it? I asked. I like your confidence. Ava wrote an address on the back of her card. This is a house at Seaside Heights in San Diego with a boat dock in the back. Park it there. It's my guess that his wife is taking the boat to Mexico, so you don't have any time to waste. Ava shook my hand goodbye with an extra squeeze. After we finish with this boat business, we should sail to Santa Barbara for a romantic weekend. But first you absolutely have to find this boat. I nodded my head yes. Once again, Ava pulled back her shoulders and thrust out her chest. She used her chest as a weapon of mass destruction to which no straight man was invulnerable. It was like they were 2 of Star Trek's phasers set to stun or maybe kill. She looked down at my crotch and smiled when she saw that she'd been successful. I couldn't stop myself. I put my arms around her and kissed her. Ava put her arms around me, pressed her chest against mine, pressed her good knee between my legs, and gave me the best kiss of my life as she stroked the back of my neck with her delicate fingertips while her tongue stroked mine. I wish we had more time, but the boat is sailing away, and you'll have to get started now if you're going to find it. I have to leave now. That was the moment when my brain made an emergency call to my heart, danger. Don't be an idiot. Run away. But the phone line to my heart was busy, and the message went to voicemail. Thank you, Lord, I said to myself as I helped her off of my boat and onto the dock. My legs were weak, so I braced myself against the deck table as I watched her walk away. She had a great walk. Why would a woman this hot date me, much less say she loved me? I'm no Thomas Magnum. I frankly think that I'm a wonderful catch for a woman, but I also know that a woman as hot as Ava wouldn't agree with my assessment. She was obviously playing me, but it was so totally unnecessary. Her body and her 3,000 were motivation enough. There was clearly more to this case than she told me about. She was trying much too hard. She not only turned me on, she turned on every alarm bell in my psyche, but I didn't care. She was the irresistible conductor enticing me straight down the tracks, and I was powerless to get off the speeding train before it reached the final station, which was undoubtedly Santa Monica or worse. I read all the paperwork that Ava had given me. The Honor Corporation owned the boat, which told me nothing. It was hard for me to concentrate when all I could think about was Ava. I figured that the boat really wasn't just the husband's sole and separate property. It was probably community property, and the 2 spouses were each fighting dirty to keep it. I also found the solution to the problem of finding the boat. The boat had an AIS identification number and transmitter. AIS stood for Automatic Identification System. The boat broadcast its location, course, and speed to satellites and nearby ships. I have a portable receiver on my boat. I laughed my head off. In less than 3 seconds, the ship's location popped up on the screen. It was heading south just past Long Beach at about 6 miles an hour, about 3 miles offshore. I lifted my inflatable boat with its electric motor out of the water where it floated next to my boat. Sea breeze carried it through the garage with the help of 2 guys on the dock and into the back of my pickup. I also carried the AIS tracker as well as some other devices that might come in handy for this caper. My pickup was filthy. I really needed to wash it now that I had some money. As I climbed under the car to remove the cardboard I placed there to catch leaking oil, I saw handprints near the bottom of the passenger's door above the cardboard. Something was duct taped to the frame. I shimmied under the car, removed a small electronic device, a GPS tracker, and put it in my pocket. I pulled out of the garage and noticed that a guy in an illegally parked white Chevrolet Camaro started following me. I made a couple of turns, and the car remained behind me. The Camaro was a lot faster than my 4X4. I drove through the nearest crowded shopping center and waited until someone was about to pull out of a space with 2 other cars poised to claim it. I jumped in front and let them block the aisle. I left the shopping center while my tail was still stuck behind the 2 competing drivers. I figured that tail worked for the wife's lawyer and was led to me by following the husband's lawyer. These people were pretty crafty, but so was I. I stopped at a gas station a few blocks away and dropped the GPS tracker in the back of another pickup truck. 5 minutes later, I was speeding south on the 405. There weren't that many harbors that the Honor could go to for fuel before reaching Mexico Newport Harbor, Dana Point, Oceanside, or San Diego. I checked for the AIS on my handheld unit as I pulled off of PCH Pacific Coast Highway in Newport Beach. The Honor was inside the Newport Harbor Channel. I saw the boat's final coordinates and tried to phone Ava, but my cell phone battery died. I kept thinking about Ava. She wasn't just a daydream, she was turning into my obsession. I hurried down PCH for another 10 miles and entered Newport Beach. I don't know if it was the caffeine from the Starbucks coffee or thinking about Ava, but I was incredibly excited about the job. I was going to commandeer a boat. I would be a pirate, a corsair, a buccaneer. This would be the coolest thing I'd ever done, and Ava would love me forever. I drove onto Balboa Island but couldn't find a place to park, so I drove to Lido Isle and parked my car there, about a mile from my quarry, which was docked on Harbor Island. I can never get the names of those 2 islands straight. I manhandled my inflatable boat 30 feet to the dock that said for members of Lido Isle Yacht Club only. I made another trip to grab the electric motor. I was set. I spied the treasure boat on Harbor Island, which is Newport's version of Fantasy Island. A house on Harbor Island was worth more than all of Captain Kidd's gold on Treasure Island. It's where Neptune would live if they allowed deities. The boat wasn't named the Honor. The Hispaniola was the name painted on the stern, the name of the ship in the book Treasure Island. She was a beautiful Grand Banks trawler with a lot of varnished wood. She floated behind a giant house, maybe 10,000 square feet, with a giant-sized yard. A house that large with a lot that big on the main channel must be worth north of 50 million. What must you have to do to make that kind of money? That's a lot of gold doubloons. I guess you had to be a pirate to afford the kind of place the boat was docked. The stern was out on the channel, touching its port side, with a large sailing yacht about 45 feet long. Next to its starboard side was a smaller sailboat. 2 men sat at the bow on deck chairs, smoking cigars and drinking beer. They were just sitting there. I guess they were guarding the boat. I touched the name painted on the stern and found, to no surprise at all, that the paint was sopping wet. They probably painted on the new name less than 10 minutes ago. I waved as I motored past, but they ignored me. I had 2 smoke bombs of the kind that I have used to hide behind when I appear or disappear on a stage during my magic act. I dropped them into the stern cockpit as I misdirected the two guards to look toward the sailboat tied next to them by saying its dock lines were loose. I kept motoring away. About a minute later, an enormous amount of smoke miraculously spewed out from the stern. I was heading back by then and yelled out, "Fire!" The two cigar smokers were stunned and confused. "Get off the boat before it blows up. Untie it from the dock so the other boats in the house don't catch fire. I'll pull it out into the channel." With that, I tied a rope from my inflatable to the port aft cleat. The men untied the mooring lines, and I towed the boat about 20 feet from the dock into the channel. Hidden by the dense smoke, I tied up to the Honor, jumped on board, ran below, inserted the keys in the ignition, ran topside, started the engines, and motored quickly away from the dock. "Arr," I said, because since I just stole a boat, I was a real live pirate, a buccaneer like Blackbeard, Jean Lafitte, or Jim Hawkins in Treasure Island. I laughed my head off until the guards realized what happened and started firing guns at me. Judging by the sound, they were .357 or .44 magnums. Two slugs shattered the windshield inches above my head. I ducked. This caper was no longer funny. Then I remembered that they execute pirates. This was clearly not a normal divorce case, but I had no time to figure that out now. The smoke still obscured me, but that wouldn't last much longer. I ran the twin throttles forward, but instead of picking up speed, the engines died. Shiver me timbers! I was only 200 feet from the house and drifting toward a small sandy beach. One guard jumped into the water and swam after me. The other tried to untie one of the sailboats. I had to think quickly. It couldn't be the batteries because the boat started quickly. The fuel gauge read over half a tank. It had to be a problem with the fuel delivery system. The swimmer mounted the swim platform and tried to climb over it. As he clutched the gunwale, there was no cutlass available, so I picked up a bottle of Heineken and smashed it down on the right hand of the scurvy dog. He screamed as he released the gunwale, and I jabbed him in the chest with my right foot and pushed him back into the water. Blood swirled around his right hand in the water. I bought myself another 20 seconds at most. I opened the fuel line cabinet and saw that both valves were turned off. I hastily switched them to the on position and started the engines again. They fired right up, and I pushed the throttles to the max and got away just as the swimming guard was about to reach the swim step. I turned around the ocean side of the island and threw the still-burning smoke grenades overboard. I also shut off the AIS transponder. I wasn't going to let them find me the way I found them. The obvious move would be for me to make my way down the main channel to the sea. That's what the guards would expect. That's what my employer would expect. That's where they'd all be looking. This trawler swam well, but she was much too slow to outrun anything quicker than a kayak. I'd have to outthink them. I turned up toward the back bay and motored to the far side of Lido Isle. I tied up at a dock behind a home with a for sale sign, with the stern facing the home. Like a score of other identical Grand Banks trawlers throughout Newport Harbor, if the bad guys were cruising after me, they wouldn't see the name of the boat on the stern. That might give me an extra minute while they had to come ashore to check it out. I needed every second I could steal. Motoring straight across Newport Harbor took me less than 5 minutes. Driving there meant going all around the bay by car and would take the bad guys at least 30 minutes, even if they knew where I was. If they had to search this side of the bay, it could take a couple of hours, unless they got lucky or smart and had run the 2-block width of Harbor Island to see where I was headed. Down below, everything looked normal. I half expected to see pieces of hash strewn around. The large beds were neatly made, each with decorative pillows. I took a knife from the kitchen and ripped open one of the pillows. I expected to find drugs, but there was only foam inside. I ripped the covers off the king-sized bed in the main stateroom and crew quarters and discovered that they covered only mattresses. 3 large, ancient Gucci steamer trunks took up the whole guest cabin. I opened them and found that inside the steamer trunks there were no doubloons or pieces of 8, but there were stacks upon stacks of 100 bills. I counted one stack and extrapolated that there were millions of dollars in greenbacks on the boat. I was half excited and half scared to death. I was unarmed, and I knew full well that if those guys found me, They'd kill me to reclaim this pirate-worthy treasure. While I had been playing at being a pirate, I was dealing with real-live buccaneers who wouldn't want me to reveal this treasure, and dead men tell no tales. I wanted to call the local police, but I didn't know if I could trust them. I also understood that they would arrest me for stealing the boat. Once I showed them the money, things would get mighty complicated. I might be killed in jail by accomplices of the bad guys or my own client. I wiped my fingerprints off everything I could possibly have touched. I removed a large circuit breaker from a panel behind and under the ignition and put it in my pocket. This boat wasn't going anywhere now that I disabled the ignition. I opened my wallet and looked at the 2 business cards that I'd received today. Obviously, if I called my client or girlfriend Ava, she'd kill me. I also realized that even if she didn't kill me, which was unlikely, she'd never pay me. I understood that she didn't love me. She only lived on my boat with me so she could keep a better eye on the treasure boat docked across from mine. I couldn't find a bag, so I filled my pockets, my shirt, and even my underpants with 100 bills. At least I'd die rich. I was running out of options. The guys who shot at me could be just seconds away from me now. Now I had no way of knowing. If I got greedy and tried to make several trips between the boat and my car, I'd probably never live to spend the money. I was sweating and shivering. My hands were trembling. I put on a Dodgers hoodie and hat for warmth that were lying on the captain's chair. I saw the other business card in my wallet for Judge Kenneth Hale. Hallelujah. I climbed into my attached dinghy and motored 1,000 feet to the boat club, where I dragged the inflatable back to the safety of my car. I started the car and slowly drove away so as not to attract any attention. I emptied my pockets, pants, and shirt of money as I drove. I put the wet stash of cash in a Trader Joe's shopping bag under my seat. I stopped at the Starbucks on PCH for another Frappuccino and coffee, and to phone Judge Hale. He was one of the few people I could trust, even though he wasn't AWOL. I was really lucky to have him in my corner. I tried to call Judge Hale from my cell phone, but the battery was dead. I found a payphone and gave him the 411 about the money I had found. I told him the address of the house on Harbor Island where I stole the boat, and the address on Lido Isle where I docked it. He said that he'd call the FBI and have them pick up the boat and raid the house. I felt pretty good. He warned me not to go back to my boat because I wouldn't be safe there. He generously offered to let me stay at his house for the night. He also warned me not to tell anyone what had happened for their safety, and not to park in front of his house, but to park several blocks away. He also told me not to walk straight to his house, but to walk several blocks in a different direction to make sure no one was following me. If I was parked north of his house, to walk around the block and approach his house from the south with my hat pulled down covering my face, because most of the homes in his neighborhood had Ring cameras. He was really smart about these things. As I drove back to Los Angeles, I realized that I mistakenly told Judge Hale that I docked the boat at Balboa Island when it was really on Lido Isle. I sang a bunch of Bob Marley songs to try and calm down. After all, I was an actual pirate. I drove into Beverly Hills, a very Tony old-money neighborhood of pre-World War II mansions. A federal judgeship must pay pretty well. It lay next to the Griffith Park flight path, a low point between the mountains that separated the San Fernando Valley from the Los Angeles Basin. The Hollywood freeway flowed through it on the ground, and above it was a busy thoroughfare for helicopters flying between the basin and the valley. The noise was non-stop and deafening. I took a serpentine route from my car to the judge's lavish house as he instructed. I hid my face with the Dodgers hat and hoodie and looked down at the pavement and not where I was going. I walked into a white panel van parked in a driveway blocking the sidewalk a few doors away from the judge's house. As I sauntered up the flagstone walkway to the judge's front door, I saw security cameras recording me. My Dodgers hat and hoodie covered my face and concealed it from the cameras. The judge opened the door wearing a dripping wet bathing suit under a bathrobe. The house was dark and gloomy. The dark mahogany walls made the house seem more like a mortuary. I was about to explain the correct location of the boat as I walked in the door. "Judge Hale, we have a problem." I was immediately attacked by a toy poodle with a red rhinestone collar. It was Ava Reed's toy poodle, Butterscotch. What the hell was her dog doing there? Before I could react or figure that out, Ava appeared in a wet, tight, revealing bathing suit with a large 38-inch bust and a large .38 caliber revolver, all of them aimed at me. Her chest may still have been set to stun, but the .38 revolver was clearly set to kill. She patted me down for a gun in a deliberate manner all over my body and between my legs. "Jack, I'm flattered by how glad you were to see me. So your affection was all an act," I said with a broken heart. "It wasn't an act. I lived on your boat to keep a better eye on the treasure boat, but I did think you were cute, and I really did enjoy our time together. But money is money, and business is business. Why did you have to search the boat and find our money? You've complicated everything, Jack. I didn't know you were a Dodgers fan." "I became one while I was in Los Angeles at UCLA," the judge explained as he kissed the back of Ava's neck. "What does your wife think about you and Ava?" I asked the judge. "Oh, she's out of town with her son, so Ava doesn't have to remain exiled on your boat this weekend." "Don't worry, I'm not jealous of you and Ava. We have an open relationship." Kenneth again kissed the back of Ava's neck. Fear and jealousy filled my emotions. Her hands touching my crotch would have been the high point of my month, save for her revolver touching my head. I knew that Thomas Magnum would wrest the gun from her and steal a kiss without getting shot, but I didn't know how. I guess I should start practicing that if I survive the evening. She motioned for me to follow her. We walked out to the hot tub where I recognized from TV a Los Angeles County Deputy Assistant Sheriff and an Assistant U.S. Attorney with a pockmarked face amid the bubbles. I'd always looked up to people like this. I was more saddened than shocked by their corruption. They watched Monday Night Football on a large-screen TV next to the in-ground hot tub. The TV set improvised on a glass table a little too small to hold such a large TV. A few feet away stood a large built-in stone barbecue topped with steaks. They smelled great. I wondered if I would get a steak for my last meal. Ava joined the judge, and while still pointing the gun at me, they entered the hot tub. The cold night air did wonderful things to her bust. "Ava, could you not point the gun at me? If you slip in the hot tub, it might accidentally go off. Jack, I saw you tackle that gunman in Venice. I know how quickly you can move, so no, the gun stays pointed at you. If I wasn't so scared, I'd be flattered," I thought. The judge spoke in a low, calm voice. "Jack, we are all very impressed with you. You shook our man in the marina who was following you. You found our GPS tracker in your car and disposed of it. Again, you were very clever. Taking out the battery from your cell phone was very, very professional and earned our respect. You found my boat quickly, but Jack, you've been a bad boy. You led us on a wild goose chase for the boat. Our man couldn't find it. It wasn't where you said it was. You've stolen our boat and we want it back. It's not docked on Balboa Island." "Where is it?" "It's anchored off Gilligan's Island," I answered. Ava rose from the hot tub and slapped me hard across my face. I rubbed my face. "It's docked off Fantasy Island, just like the love you claimed you had for me." "Don't act cute with us," Ava said as she slapped me across the other side of my face, just as hard as the first slap. "Ava, that wasn't called for." "I'm sorry, Jack. Where is my boat?" Kenneth shook his head. Ava sat back in the hot tub. At first, I couldn't think of a thing to say. "Judge, you told me how eternally grateful you were to me for the help I gave your son. Why did you do this to me? I'm truly sorry, but we were in a hurry, and you were the only person I knew who could operate and navigate a boat. And, well, business is business," the judge answered. "And because you're a natural-born PI," the assistant U.S. attorney added, "the guards on the boat tried to kill me. It was a risk we were willing to take," the assistant U.S. attorney smirked. "You didn't plan this very well. How would you recover your money if I was dead? That's why we had a man following you." Ava shrugged her shoulders. "He was there to protect you. When you ditched him, you outsmarted yourself. I don't believe you. As soon as I docked the boat in San Diego, he would have killed me. And now you're going to kill me. We aren't going to kill you," the judge paused, "if we don't have to. You and I are much alike. You're a buccaneer. We're barristers. It's the same thing. Tell us where you've hidden the boat, and we'll pay you 40,000. You'll become part of our group. We can use a bright young man like you. You needn't worry. In fact, there's a bottle of aged rum on the table. Why don't you pour yourself a glass and relax a little? I thought of Robert Louis Stevenson's book, Treasure Island. 15 men on the dead man's chest, yo-ho-ho, and a bottle of rum. Drink and the devil had done for the rest, yo-ho-ho, and a bottle of rum. I refused the rum. I needed all my wits about me. I was fighting for my life against Ivy League graduates. It was time to use all the fighting skills my dad had taught me growing up as one of the shortest kids on the dangerous streets of Venice. When you're in trouble, don't use your fists, don't use your feet, use your brain. Think fast and talk your way out of it. And as a short, skinny child, I had many times. I swear that my IQ instantly jumped by 20 points, inspired by my father's advice and my childhood experiences. With my newly found self-confidence, I ridiculed my captors. Please spare me. Do you think I came here without insurance? Didn't you think I'd have a plan B? I'm not worried. I have this situation under control and you're all screwed. Did you tell anyone about any of this? Asked the gray-haired sheriff. Are you willing to bet your lives that I didn't? It was my turn to taunt them. Jack, did you tell anyone? Added the judge. I said nothing. I couldn't decide which answer might save my life. Damn! Screamed the assistant U.S. attorney as one of the football teams scored a touchdown. You owe me 1,000, responded the federal judge with a hearty laugh. See, Jack, we're all just friends here. Despite his protestation of friendship, Ava never took her gun off me. She held the judge's hand with her other hand. If she didn't shoot me, I would probably die of a broken, jealous heart. The government doesn't pay us very much, Judge. Haven't had a raise in almost 10 years. We all have to moonlight a bit. By selling drugs? I asked. Shame on you for even thinking that, the sheriff answered. None of us touches drugs. We are drug runners. When we find drugs, we destroy them. We just confiscate their money. Think of us as crime-fighting vigilantes, Ava said without a trace of irony or sarcasm, who also profit by our good deeds. We call ourselves the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, the sheriff added. If you fancy yourselves the Holy Trinity, then you must be Judas Iscariot, I pointed at Ava. Jack, one way or another, you are going to tell us where the boat is, Ava said. Tell us now. I really like you. Don't make me hurt you. Ava aimed the gun at my shaking left knee. I looked at the steaks on the barbecue as I too was getting grilled. I also saw that the pool area was covered by security cameras. Calm down, Ava, reasoned Judge Hale. There's no need for threats. Jack is a reasonable person. We're all reasonable people. Jack, you must forgive Ava. You know what they say about redheads and their tempers. I know we can work this out before we have to become impolite and perhaps worse. I looked at their hands. Each one wore a Yale class ring like the one the judge wore. I want to thank you all for confessing on tape. I'll get a substantial reward. The FBI has been on to you for a while. They followed Ava to my boat and spoke with me after she left. Do you think a PI like me was able to lose your man and steal the boat all by myself without their help? The reason your man didn't find the boat is because the FBI has it. Do you all want to go down for murder? They're listening to every word we're saying. They've recorded your confessions. They call you the Yale Mafia. I don't believe him. Ava shook her head. He's bluffing. See how he's shaking? I always shake when I'm holding the winning hand. It's my tell. How would this idiot know that we all went to Yale? We should have been more careful. The deputy shook his head. The FBI hacked into your security system. All those cameras are feeding straight to them. If you kill me, those cameras will convict you. That system hasn't worked in weeks. Try to get a workman to show up in L.A. It's impossible, the judge laughed. That's what the FBI wants you to think. There's a white FBI panel van parked across the street. Go look. And my mug is on the security system of each of your neighbors. I didn't follow your directions to cover my face. He's right, the judge said as he poured himself tequila from a bottle next to the hot tub. One of the endless stream of helicopters flew overhead. I waved both of my hands toward it. I want you to stop screwing around with me, and now I'm going to stop screwing around with you. That's an FBI helicopter. Your game is over. Ava, hand me the gun, slowly. But first, If you all walk outside with me right now with your hands behind your heads, it will go better for you," the judge said in a most injudicious manner. "What if he is wearing a wire?" the nervous assistant U.S. attorney asked. I removed the boat ignition circuit breaker from my pocket and held it up to them. "Special Agent Monroe, I'm bringing the suspects out front. Don't shoot. That's not a wire. It's a circuit breaker." "Let me see it," the sheriff said. I palmed the circuit breaker and made it disappear. "But he could still have a wire," the sheriff said. "Good point," replied Ava. "Jack, take off your clothes," ordered the woman with whom I previously wanted to spend the rest of my life. "Naked. Now." Of course, it looked like I would be dead within the hour, and my wish to spend the rest of my life with her would, in some perverse way, come true. They called my bluff. So much for poker. Damn, my knees were shaking so hard I could have been dancing the Charleston. I was off balance to begin with. I was so scared I tried to take off my jeans without first removing my shoes. A 100 bill fell out of my pants. "Kick it hard for that field goal," screamed the sheriff at the TV. The ball sailed through the air. "Is that our money?" demanded the woman of my dreams as she put one arm around the judge. I was now filled more with jealousy and rage than fear. I was flustered. I tripped and fell against the giant 70-inch TV precariously perched on a glass table. As it began to fall on the ground, I subconsciously knew this was my one chance to survive and also my one chance to get my revenge on Ava. Without a conscious thought, I kicked the TV right into the pool. I scored a Super Bowl game-winning touchdown. Sparks flew out of the back of the TV as it electrocuted my screaming would-be executioners. All of Ava's muscles contracted, including her trigger finger. She shot the sheriff as she looked at me, and her pleading eyes screamed, "Help me!" It was her life for mine. If I saved her, she'd still kill me. I didn't care. I loved her and tried to reach over to her, but she was by now in the middle of the hot tub, violently shaking, and I couldn't reach her without jumping in and dying with her. I started screaming in frustration. "Damn it, I warned you not to mess with me." But I couldn't stop crying. I chose self-preservation and will probably hate myself forever because of it. Hale may have been a judge, but that day I was the jury, and the sentence was death by electrocution. They didn't die immediately. It took almost 30 seconds until all of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse slid under the water while still convulsing. I pulled up my pants and picked up my money. I wiped my fingerprints from everything I touched, including the doorbell, then I left. Again, I covered my face with my stolen Dodgers hat, hoodie, and sunglasses, while I slowly walked out of the house and back to my car. I looked straight down at the ground the whole time because who knew how many of these houses had security cameras. I was so filled with anger, hatred, sorrow, regret, jealousy, and love for Ava that I couldn't process all of my feelings. I was happy to still be alive, but I cried as I walked and sang the Jimmy Ruffin song, "What Becomes of the Broken-Hearted." I walked in the opposite direction of my car for several blocks and then made several right turns in case the police canvassed the neighbor's security cameras. I guess that's why the judge didn't want me parked in front of his house. The thought of possessing the millions of dollars on the boat was tempting. The judge had a man still looking for the boat, and by now the guys in Newport from whom I seized the boat must have figured out that I didn't go out to sea. That meant they would search all the possible places in Newport where I could have stashed the boat. There weren't that many. They must be closing in on the boat's location by now. A few minutes later and a few miles away, I found a Spanish-speaking man who understood no English speaking on his cell phone. I covered my face with my hat, hoodie, and large sunglasses. I wiped my fingerprints from the 20 that I gave him. I dialed the FBI from his cell phone. I wiped my prints from his phone. As he read from a paper that I gave him, he informed the FBI of the location of the boat and drop house. He had no idea what he was saying. Then I had him repeat it all to the Secret Service and the Newport Beach Police. Maybe the 3 agencies would keep each other honest. Maybe not. I drove aimlessly for the next few hours. Then news on the car radio reported a shootout on a boat in Newport Beach between the FBI and alleged drug smugglers over millions of dollars. I cried as I drove back to my boat. Ava was an angel who I loved with all my heart since the first morning I saw her, but I killed her. Finally, after hours of crying, I realized and accepted the heartbreaking truth. Ava wasn't my angel of the morning, but I was her angel of death. Thanks for tuning in to this wild tale of deception and danger. What would you do if you found yourself caught between love and betrayal like Jack? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more incredible stories like this one. Sheriff Hank Watson of Pine Creek, Tennessee, stepped out of his patrol car. He had just been elected to his third term as Johnson County Sheriff. Watson hitched up his gun belt to settle it back into place. At age 45, he wasn't a big-belly Southern sheriff, but he wasn't far from it. Standing 61 in his cowboy boots, he weighed a little over 210 pounds. His face was ruddy, especially his nose, both from working out in the weather and from too much bourbon. It was early evening, and the sun was just beginning to drop behind Black Mountain. The evening was cold, and it would be a dark night with absolutely no moonlight. His breath puffed out like a smoke cloud as he softly closed his door in front of the house. The small house sat at the head of a hollow that opened up to the fields of the farm. It was late fall, and most of the trees had no leaves on their branches. There were a few pine trees along the path that led to the first of the fields. There were several large oak and hickory trees around the house that looked like huge skeletal creatures waiting to pounce. The cold wind that was blowing freed them from their morbidity and allowed them to dance and sway. Watson walked up 3 steps onto the porch that ran across the front of a log cabin, and he pulled his Colt .45 from its holster with his right hand. He carried a set of handcuffs in his left. Hank used the butt of the pistol to bang on the door. "Briggs, come out," Hank ordered. "Keep your hands free and where I can see them." Slowly the door opened, and Jake Briggs stepped out onto the porch. Jake was a young-looking 35, tall and trim at 180 pounds. With his dark hair, blue eyes, and a square chin, most single women in town and some married ones considered him to be ruggedly handsome. "What's with the Briggs stuff, Hank?" Jake asked in a puzzled voice. "We've been best friends since we were high school freshmen. You've never called me by my last name." Looking down, he saw the Colt in Hank's hand. "Why the gun?" Now his tone was a cross between puzzlement and anger. Sheriff Watson pointed the gun at Jake. "Don't give me any trouble and put your hands out in front of you. Our friendship won't stop me from shooting you if you try anything." Jake looked at the Colt, then at Hank's eyes, and put out his hands. Hank tossed the restraints to Jake. "Put those on and then we'll talk." Not having a choice, Jake put one cuff around his left wrist and the other one around his right. He locked them up. "Now, where were you last night, Jake?" "Right here, all night." "You alone?" Jake hesitated for just a second. "Yep, I worked on the corral until dusk, cooked supper and went to bed around 9, I reckon." He had not been alone, but he couldn't tell Hank that. Jake and Hank's wife, Emily, had spent most of the night together, and it wasn't the first time. Jake and Emily had been high school sweethearts. They planned on getting married when they graduated, and Jake got a job. Pine Creek was a small town, and there weren't many jobs available, so Jake enlisted in the Army to get a stake put together so he and Emily could marry. He also hoped to learn a skill that would make finding a job a bit easier. 2 events happened while he was in the Army that would lead to the secret meetings between the young lovers. Jake's parents died during his 3rd year in the Army. He came home for the funeral and found his folks had left him their farm and cabin. Jake had 1 more year in his enlistment before he could come home and run the farm. The other event affected Emily the most, but also broke Jake's heart. Her parents hit hard times, and they were about to lose their business and their home. Hank Watson told Emily if she would marry him, he would pay off her parents' home and pay all the back bills from the business. Emily liked Hank. They'd gone to the same school, but she didn't love him. She loved Jake and was waiting on him to come home. Emily and her parents didn't have anywhere to go if they lost the house and business, and there was no chance of making a living in Pine Creek. So Emily decided she had to take care of them and agreed to marry Hank. She had tears leaking from her eyes during the ceremony. "What's this about, Hank?" Jake asked. "Tommy Carson was killed in front of the town hall just after dark last night," Hank answered. "Shot with a .357 caliber gun. You own a Ruger .357, don't you? Yes, I own a .357, but I didn't kill him, Hank. He ran bad moonshine, cheated at cards, and stole things when he had the chance. It's no surprise he got shot. Got 2 witnesses at the scene who gave a description that sounds a lot like you. They said they saw a man running away from the body. Said the man was about 6 feet, slender. Said they saw dark hair when the man's hat fell off when he started running. Sure sounds like you, Jake. Sounds like a lot of other men too, Hank. How did those witnesses see the color of the murderer's hair? It was the dark of the moon. That big streetlight they put up on the town hall was burning bright. You know it's almost as bright as daytime. I didn't kill Carson. Jake shook his head. Hell, I didn't like him, but I had no reason to shoot him. Where's your Ruger, Jake? It's on the nightstand by the bed. Come on, I'll show you. Jake turned and started to go back into the house. Hold it right there, Jake, Watson ordered and cocked his pistol. I'll put you in the back of the patrol car, and then I'll go check on the gun. Holding onto his arm, Hank directed Jake toward the back door of the patrol car and opened it. Using a technique every cop has used to put someone into a car, Hank put his hand on the back of Jake's head to protect the suspect. Instead of protecting Jake, Hank used his leverage to ram Jake's head into the doorframe. Watch your head, Jake. After he put his man into the car, Hank leaned over. I know you weren't alone last night, and I know who you were with. Now you're going to pay, Jake. You're going to pay big time. I know you didn't kill Tommy. I did, and good riddance. But I am going to see you convicted of the murder and watch you hang. And then my cheating wife is going to pay. Yes, Emily is going to pay for fooling around on me her own self. Hank stood up, slammed the door, and walked into the house to retrieve the .357 pistol. Pulling on a thin pair of gloves, he came out onto the front porch and fired 2 shots into the ground in front of the cabin. Hank dropped the big pistol into an evidence bag and removed his gloves. I do believe this weapon's been fired recently, he said, and laughed. Hank climbed into the driver's seat and turned halfway around. And the only fingerprints on the gun are yours, Jake. You fired that gun just now. Hank! Jake's jaws were clenched in anger. I'll tell them about that, you backstabbing bastard. I'll say I didn't, and I'll say you tried to hide the gun. Now who are they going to believe, Jake? They going to believe an accused murderer or the fine, upstanding county sheriff? After a short 20-minute drive, the patrol car pulled into the sheriff's reserved parking space at the courthouse. Pine Creek was the county seat of Johnson County. The courthouse served both Johnson County and the locals of the small town. There was a lawn, benches, and a walking trail through the large courthouse square that surrounded the large quarried stone building. The building contained 2 courtrooms, county records from as far back as the early 1800s, as well as the town's records, the sheriff's office, and a jail with 2 cells. The jail usually held men who had overindulged in moonshine or whiskey, and once in a while, a husband in a domestic abuse case. Tonight, it would hold Jake Briggs, an innocent man accused of murder. The next morning at 9:00, Jake was led into the main courtroom to be arraigned on the charge of murder in the first degree. Tom Watson, Hank's cousin, was the presiding judge. He was also the owner of the bank and the richest man in the county. "Do you have an attorney, young man?" Judge Watson asked. "No, sir. I was brought here last night late, and this is the first time I've been out of my cell," Jake answered. "Sheriff Watson, make sure this young man gets to use the phone so he can obtain legal counsel." "Yes, sir, Your Honor." "I'll do that first thing." Turning back to Jake, the judge continued, "You have been charged with the premeditated murder of one Thomas Carson. How do you plead? We can go ahead, and if once you get representation you want to change or amend your plea, we will revisit the question." Jake couldn't believe how fast things were going. He looked at Hank Watson, who was grinning, and then at Judge Watson, who had a bit of a smirk on his face. Jake didn't know that the judge was aware and approved of what the sheriff was doing. Judge Watson held a grudge for a long time. Jake's parents had openly and loudly opposed Watson each time he ran in an election for the judgeship. They would bring to light some shady business dealings and moral issues. They never quite stopped Watson from being elected, but their efforts stopped his advance in the state legal system. Watson was relegated to being a small town and county judge, a small fish in an even smaller pond. The parents were long dead, but Jake would do for the judge's revenge. "Not guilty, Judge," Jake proclaimed. "I didn't kill Carson, and Hank knows it. We'll get into all that during the trial, young man." Turning to Hank, he said, "Take him back to his cell and make sure he gets his phone call." Back in the cell area, the deputy sheriff, Billy, sat Jake down at a table with a phone and a phone book. Jake looked through the book and found only 2 attorneys in the area. One was the county prosecuting attorney, the other one was Sam Chilton, so he called Chilton. The lawyer agreed to meet with Jake the first thing the next morning. Chilton was sitting in a sort of conference room the next morning when Jake was led into the room in handcuffs and ankle shackles. He was cuffed to a round bar welded into the stationary table. After Jake was situated, Chilton looked at him. "Mr. Briggs, I should not have agreed to meet with you. I am involved in several other legal actions and would not have the time to properly represent you in a murder trial." Chilton stood up, gathered his briefcase, and spoke. "I hope you do okay with your trial. Goodbye, Mr. Briggs." He turned and left the conference room. What the hell, Jake thought, shaking his head. He was ready to defend me yesterday. Hank came in to take him back to his cell. "I need to call a lawyer in Franklin," Jake said. "Can you get me a phone book for there?" "Couldn't find an attorney here and thought I'd try the big city." "Did you, Jake?" Hank said. Franklin was about 70 miles east and a little south of Pine Creek, with a population of just over 120,000. He grabbed Jake's arm. "You had the one phone call you're allowed. Let's get you back to your cell. Don't worry, you ain't going to be there long." As Hank pushed his prisoner back into the cell, he leaned in and whispered, "I told you I am going to watch you hang." The sheriff locked the cell door and left. The next time Jake was taken out of his cell was for his appearance in court. Hank escorted him down the hallway to the courtroom. Jake shuffled along. He was handcuffed with shackles on his feet, and he could only take very small steps. Just before opening the door, Hank moved closer to Jake and whispered, "If you mention anything about Emily, I'll kill her. Do you understand? I'll take her over behind Deer Ridge, put a bullet in her head, bury her, and not lose a minute's sleep about it." Hank moved away and added, "I am as serious as a heart attack, Jake." Hank sat him down at a table in front of the judge's bench and took off the handcuffs, but the leg shackles stayed on and he stood close to Jake. Judge Watson straightened a few papers and then banged his gavel. "Johnson County, State of Tennessee versus Jake Briggs on the charge of murder in the first degree is called to order." Turning to Charles Barnett, the county attorney and prosecutor, Watson asked, "Are you ready to proceed, Mr. Barnett?" "Yes, Your Honor," Barnett answered as he stood up. "Do you have counsel, Mr. Briggs?" the judge asked. "No, sir. The only other lawyer in town said he wouldn't take my case. I wanted to call a lawyer in Franklin, but Hank wouldn't let me. Said I'd already had my phone call. So you will be defending yourself then," the judge said. Looking back at Barnett, he ordered, "Make your opening statement, Charlie." "Sure thing, Tom." He turned to the 6 people chosen for the jury and started to speak. "I object, Judge," Jake said, and tried to stand up. Hank pushed him back down. "What is your objection, Mr. Briggs?" "I don't know much about the law, but I do know I have the right to help choose the jury. It was only yesterday that I was arrested, and I've never met these people. Objection overruled. Continue, Charlie." Jake shook off Hank's hand and stood up. "Your Honor, you're denying me my rights, and this isn't what they call due process." "I want sit down, Mr. Briggs," the judge instructed, and Hank pushed Jake back down in the chair. "I'll decide what due process in my court is. If you continue with these interruptions, I will have you muzzled." For the first time, Jake knew and understood that he was going to die. "Damn sure I'm not going to get a fair trial in this county," Jake thought. "Blood is thicker than the truth. The judge is Hank's cousin, and he's going to help Hank kill me. Don't help none that my parents always worked against him at election time. He's going to find me guilty and let Hank hang me. Don't matter much what I say." Barnett stood before the jury of 5 men and 1 woman. His opening statement was brief. "Ladies and gentlemen, the state will prove that that man," he pointed at Jake, shot and killed one Thomas Carson with malice aforethought. The attorney put his hand inside his coat, took hold of his vest, and took a stance as if he were a modern-day Clarence Darrow. The defendant had a run-in with Carson 2 weeks previously concerning a hog that Carson supposedly stole from the Briggs farm. The murder of Thomas Carson was the defendant's answer to that confrontation. Barnett paused to let his words take effect and then continued. The state has witnesses that saw Mr. Briggs shoot Mr. Carson and run from the scene of the murder. We will prove that the defendant had the motive, means, and opportunity to commit this heinous crime. We will be asking for the death penalty. Barnett sat down. Mr. Briggs, you may give your opening statement now, Judge Watson said. Jake stood in front of the jury just as Barnett had done. I didn't kill Carson, and I was at home when they said it happened. Yeah, I didn't like him, and he did steal a hog from the farm, but when I confronted him about it, he offered to give it back or pay for it. I took the money and that was the end of it. Hank or Sheriff Watson is trying to railroad me. He paused and then said, Guess that's about it. He sat down. Charlie, how long is your side going to take? I've got a meeting at 2, Judge Watson said. Not long, Judge. Got 2 eyewitnesses and a piece of evidence to submit, and that's about it. Present your evidence and testimony, Charlie. Barnett took a sealed evidence bag out of his briefcase and turned to the court. Mr. Carson was shot and killed with a .357 pistol. This pistol. It has been recently fired, and from the empty shells in the cylinder, it was fired twice, the same number of times that the victim was shot. This gun belongs to the defendant, Jake Briggs. He handed the pistol to Judge Watson and said, I ask that this pistol be marked as prosecution's Exhibit 1. Any objections, Mr. Briggs? It's my gun, but Hank took it from my bedroom and fired it twice when he got outside. That doesn't prove that it killed Carson. Objection overruled. Call your first witness, Charlie. The state calls Jacob Stanley to the stand, Barnett said in a loud voice. A man sitting in the courtroom stood and made his way to the stand. He was sworn in and took his seat in the witness chair. Stanley was dressed in a white short-sleeved shirt and bib overalls. His only concession to being in court was a very loud, very wide tie. It hung over the bib of the overalls and had to be from 2 or 3 decades previously. It also had food stains on it. Stanley had the shakes that accompanied withdrawal from a drug, in this case, alcohol. Stanley hung out at the Riverside Tavern across the street from the town hall, and he was seldom sober. He would cage drinks from anyone who would listen to him. Stanley was surprised to see Jake in court. When Hank Watson gave him the money to testify, he was told he would not have to see the man he was accusing of murder. Mr. Stanley, you were in the Riverside Tavern on the night in question, is that right? Stanley's yes answer led to the next question. And what, if anything, unusual did you see? Stanley had several beads of sweat on his forehead, and his hands trembled where he had them clasped on the edge of the witness box. Jake could see that he was coming down from his constant drunken state and was hurting. I seen a man shoot that Carson fella. Then he stood over him and shot him again. And what time did this take place? Was about 10 p.m.? I remember because I just got my last beer of the night and was going to head home after I drank it. Did you recognize the man that did the shooting? Yes, sir, it were him. Stanley pointed toward Jake sitting behind the defendant's table. Jake jumped to his feet and yelled, That's a lie, I was at home, and this old drunk can't see more than 10 feet when he's been drinking, and he drinks every night until the bar closes. Sit down, Mr. Briggs, the judge said. You will get your chance to cross-examine the witness. It was dark that time of night, Barnett said. How can you be so sure it was Mr. Briggs? The shooting was under that new town hall light. Then the killer ran, but when he did, his hat fell off. That's when I knew it was him that done the shooting. Stanley pointed at Jake again. No further questions, Your Honor, Barnett said. Your witness, Mr. Briggs. When Jake looked puzzled, the judge added, You may cross-examine the witness. Jake stood, looked at the witness, and didn't say anything for about 30 seconds. Stanley fidgeted in his seat and looked anywhere but at Jake. You're a liar. By 10, you're totally wasted and can barely see to walk. You couldn't have seen me. Objection, Your Honor, Barnett said. Mr. Briggs is badgering the witness. Is there a question from the defendant somewhere in there? Ask a question, Mr. Briggs, or I'll excuse the witness. What's the use, Jake said and sat down. As Stanley left the stand, the judge told Barnett to call his next witness. The state calls Stephen Chilton. The only reason that Stephen Chilton didn't hold the title of town drunk was that dubious honor belonged to Jacob Stanley. But if the small town had been big enough for a second town drunk, it would have been Chilton. He had at least made an effort to clean up for court. Chilton wore a clean, if wrinkled, pair of slacks and a blue button-down shirt, but he didn't wear a tie. He, too, was suffering from the effects of coming down from a year-long drunk. Chilton was sweating as if he'd been working in the hot sun. His shirt was hanging on him and was wet in several places. His hands had a decided tremor and couldn't seem to stay still. He even staggered getting to the witness stand. Once there, he was all shakes and shudders and couldn't seem to sit still. Barnett stood and began questioning his witness. The reason you are here, Mr. Chilton, is because of what you told Sheriff Watson about what you saw on the night in question. What did you see? Chilton wiped his hand over his face and sat up straighter. He, too, was nervous at seeing Jake in the courtroom. I seen Jake there shoot Tommy Carson twice and then run away. And there's no doubt in your mind that it was Jake Briggs who shot Mr. Carson? Barnett asked. No, it were him all right. His hat fell off when he run. That's how I knew it was him. No more questions, Your Honor, Barnett said and sat back down. Your witness, Mr. Briggs? Judge Watson said. There was a bit of a smirk on his face and in his tone. Where were you when you saw me supposedly kill Carson? Jake didn't bother to get up. I was in my car parked on the north side of the town hall square. Why were you parked there at that time of night? I stopped to have a drink before going home. Chilton gave a small smile as he turned toward the jury. The wife don't like me to drink at home. You do that a lot, don't you, Chilton? Chilton looked puzzled and didn't answer. I heard that every night you parked there with never less than a 12-pack of beer and a bottle of whiskey. Chilton looked even more nervous and didn't answer. Jake gave Chilton a disgusted look and said, I got no more use for this drunk. Objection, Judge, Barnett said in a loud voice as he stood up. Sustained. Mr. Briggs, you will refrain from insulting the witness. It can't be an insult if it's the truth, Jake replied. This man shouldn't be allowed to walk, much less drive. Same goes for Stanley. Jake's tone was angry. If this wasn't a kangaroo court, I wouldn't have to do that. Judge Watson sort of swelled up and said, Mr. Briggs, any more of that kind of talk and I'll hold you in contempt. You're right there, Judge. I got nothing but contempt for this trial. Besides, what are you going to do to me? Put me in jail? Jake slid down in the chair until his neck was on the back and his legs were stretched out under the table. Do your damnedest, he said to the judge. Judge Watson stared at Jake for over a minute. He was obviously angry at Jake's outburst. Finally, he asked, Any more on your side, Charlie? Barnett shook his head. Then you can give your closing statement. Barnett stood and stepped in front of the jury box. Ladies and gentlemen, the state has given evidence and proved that all of the factors necessary for this crime exist. Briggs had the motivation. Carson stole a hog from him. The defendant had the means. A .357 revolver, the same caliber weapon that killed Carson, that the lab said had been fired recently, and he had the opportunity. He did the shooting late at night in a way he thought wouldn't be seen. He was wrong because the new nightlight at the town hall allowed our two witnesses to see him. I ask for a finding of guilty. Thank you. He nodded at the judge and sat down. Judge Watson looked at Jake. Your turn for your closing argument. This time, Jake stood and faced the jury. You all know this is a setup. Those two witnesses haven't had a sober day in the last 5 years. Even if they could see past their drunk, they didn't see me. I was at home when Carson was killed. Jake sat back down. The jury will retire, consider the evidence, and bring back a verdict, the judge ordered. The jury filed out. Jake watched them go. Every one of those jurors was handpicked by Hank and the judge. Won't be much of a surprise at the verdict, Jake thought. He was taken back to his cell, brought a bologna sandwich and weak coffee for lunch, and then was left alone until supper. Supper was another bologna sandwich, but this time it had a slice of cheese and mustard on it. But the coffee was from that morning. Damn, I am eating high on the hog tonight. At 8:00 the next morning, Jake was taken to the locker room that the sheriff and his deputy used. He was given a bar of soap, a disposable razor, a comb, and a towel. The deputy watched him the whole time as he bathed and shaved. "You all worried I am going to cut my throat or slice my wrists with this cheap razor, deputy?" Jake asked. "Get done and get dressed. You're going to see the judge this morning." Jake was handcuffed with both wrist and ankle shackles again and led into the courtroom. Judge Watson sort of frowned at him and pointed to the defendant's table. The jury was seated in the jury box, and some looked nervous. "Do you have any evidence or witnesses to bring forth, Mr. Briggs, before we hear the verdict?" the judge asked. "What good would it do? You're going to find me guilty when I am not. Guess Hank and you got it all figured out." "Very well," Judge Watson replied. He turned toward the jury box. "Mr. Foreman, do you have a verdict? If so, stand and read it to the court." A man stood. It was Curtis Mitchell, the owner of the only grocery store in town. Judge Watson was a not-saucelent partner in the store. Holding up a piece of legal-size paper, he read, "In the case of the state versus Jake Briggs on the charge of first-degree murder, we, the jury, find the defendant." Mitchell paused and gulped before he continued. "We find him guilty of the charge." He sat down quickly and wiped the sweat off his forehead. "Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Watson said. "You are excused and may leave the courtroom. Will the defendant please rise?" Jake looked at the judge, flipped him the bird, knowing anything he said would be useless, and remained seated. "Very well, Mr. Briggs. You have been found guilty of murder in the first degree by a jury of your peers. I sentence you to hang to pay for your crime. The sentence will be carried out after the state's attorney or one of his assistants comes here and reviews the case." Now Judge Watson gave Jake an evil grin. "Don't worry, boy, it won't be more than a week." Jake was taken back to his cell and the restraints were removed. This time for lunch, the deputy brought him a large cheeseburger, fries, and a soda. "Guess the condemned man gets better food," he thought as he was eating. He thought about the state's attorney coming to review the trial. Maybe he'll get to talk to him and tell him the truth. At 10:00 p.m., Jake had a visitor. It was Emily. She had been beaten. Her left eye was swollen almost shut, her bottom lip was split, and there were bruises on both of her arms. "What happened, Emily?" Jake asked. "Hank did it. Said he wanted you to see part of what would happen to me if you say we were together that night." "Oh, Jake, he said he'd kill me." Emily had tears running down her face when she added, "And Judge Watson told me if anything happened to Hank that he'd take care of me, and I believe him. They'll kill me, stash me somewhere, and bury me, but how can I keep quiet?" Jake reached through the bars of his cell and pulled Emily as close as possible. He put his head against hers through the bars and ran his hands up and down her back as she cried. Swallowing hard, he stood back but continued to hold her hands. "Don't worry, Emily. When that state's attorney gets here and reviews the trial, there's no way hell let Hank and the judge hang me. I won't have to say nothing to him about us." Emily looked at Jake with hope. "Your name will never come into it. Trust me. I'll always take care of and protect you." "Well, I see the lovebirds are saying goodbye," Hank said as he came into the cell area. He came over and pulled Emily into his arms. "Before they hang you, Jake, I want you to think about who is going to be sleeping and living with your little playmate. Just so we're clear, if you use her as an alibi, I'll kill her." He pulled Emily out of the cell ward and into the office. Jake lay on his bunk all night wondering if he was going to get through this trouble, or would he hang like Hank promised. Sometime just before dawn, he finally fell into a troubled sleep. His last thought was, "I'll just have to hope the review of the case will at least get me another trial. Best I can hope for." The guilty verdict for Jake Briggs was pronounced on a Friday. The assistant state's attorney, Robert Carrington, came on the following Tuesday to review the case. Using a small conference room, he took the next day to read the transcript, interview Judge Watson and Sheriff Hank Watson, and even had the two witnesses come in to talk to him. After his review, he found that, in his opinion, everything was on the up and up, if a little unorthodox. He went to the judge's chambers. "When will you have the sentence hearing?" Judge Watson asked. "We'll have the hearing tomorrow and carry out the sentence on Saturday. Got to have time to set up the gallows." "I'd like to talk to Mr. Briggs, if I may," Carrington requested. "That's a little unorthodox, isn't it, young man?" "Maybe so, but it is legal. I want to talk to Briggs before you carry out the sentence." Carrington was sure Briggs was going to be executed. The whole trial pointed to it. Judge Watson stared at the attorney for almost a minute, trying to intimidate him. He saw a young man who was sure of himself and wouldn't let himself be swayed. "Very well, Mr. Carrington. You can have time with the defendant after the sentence is passed." Jake was led into the courtroom on Wednesday morning. This time Hank held onto his shirt and the back of his neck to make sure he remained standing as the judge walked to his seat behind the bench. "Do you have anything to say, Mr. Briggs, before I pass sentence?" Knowing it wouldn't make any difference, Jake still had to try and get through to the jury, people in the courtroom, and the state's attorney. "I didn't kill Carson. Like I said before, he stole a hog from me. But then he made it good, so we were quits. Hank and the judge have it in for me. The witnesses are a couple of drunks, and I am sure Hank forced them to testify. They chose the jurors and didn't let me get my say. Don't let them kill me. I am innocent." He jerked away from Hank but remained standing. Jake was going to face his fate on his feet. "Mr. Briggs, you have been found guilty of the murder of Thomas Carson. You are sentenced to be hung by the neck until you are dead on Saturday next. May God have mercy on your soul. Sheriff, return the prisoner to his cell." Jake was on his bunk, leaning on the wall on Thursday evening when Carrington was allowed to see him. "Sheriff, I'd like to talk to Mr. Briggs face to face. Please bring him out of the cell. I know you're some high up from the state capitol, but Briggs is a convicted murderer and my prisoner. He ain't coming out of that cell except in shackles, and you ain't going to be alone with him if he leaves that cell." "Very well, open the door, and I'll go into the cell, and you can lock the door behind me. I told you, he is a murderer." Carrington stepped in front of the sheriff and stared at him. "If he kills me, then you can hang him twice. Now open the door." Hank wasn't used to people confronting him, but opened the cell door. After Carrington entered, Hank locked the door and stood outside watching Carrington and Jake. Carrington waved him away, and Hank left the cell area. "My name is Robert Carrington, Mr. Briggs," he said, and shook hands with Jake. "I am the assistant state's attorney, and I have reviewed the trial." Jake nodded and just looked at the attorney. "Is there anything you want to say about the trial and the way it was conducted?" "Mr. Carrington, is it like I said before? I didn't kill Carson. I was home when the shooting took place." Jake sort of laughed. "This whole thing is a setup." "How so, Mr. Briggs?" "There are only 2 lawyers in town, and one is the prosecutor, so I called the other one. At first he said he'd take my case. The next day he said he had too much going on to help me. I think Hank or Sheriff Watson or the judge got to him and called him off. They wouldn't let me call a lawyer in Franklin, said I'd already had my phone call." Jake paced a little and continued, "I didn't get to see the jury until the trial started. Ain't I supposed to meet them before? The 2 witnesses are drunks, and the trial is the first time they've been sober in years. The brief of the trial said you didn't want to question the jurors and refused legal counsel. Not a damn word of truth to that. The Watsons are railroading me." "Why would they do that? I done something that Hank didn't like, and my folks strongly opposed the judge in every election. Between Hank and the judge, they're going to hang me. What could you have done that would make the sheriff want to execute you?" Jake shook his head and finally said, "I can't tell you that, Mr. Carrington. If I do, someone I care about will be hurt." Carrington tried to get Jake to explain, but the young man refused to say any more. "If you don't tell me more, I can't stop this, Mr. Briggs. For your sake, you better tell me what's going on. Can't, I just can't." Jake had a hangdog expression, and his voice sounded defeated. Carrington waited for a few minutes, hoping Jake would change his mind. When he didn't, Carrington called for the sheriff and left the cell. Hank waited until the attorney cleared the cell area and looked in at Jake. "That's good, Jake. Remember what will happen if you say anything." He turned and left the area. The gallows had been erected in the city square behind the courthouse. It was 10 feet tall with a square platform 12 x 10 feet. Two opposing sides had a thick beam running vertically above the platform with a strong crossbeam joining them at their tops. There was a trapdoor in the center of the platform and a lever on one side that would spring the trap. Carrington stayed in town until the day of the hanging. He watched Judge Watson lead the way up the stairs of the gallows, followed by Jake with his hands cuffed behind him. The deputy crowded the prisoner up the stairs and positioned him under the noose hanging down from the crossbeam. He put the noose around Jake's neck and stepped over to the release lever and put his hand on it. Judge Watson stood to one side of the platform. The state's attorney stepped closer to the gallows and looked up at Jake. "Jake, what's your alibi? If you were somewhere else or have someone to verify your claim of being at your home, you don't have to die," he said in an almost pleading voice. Jake shook his head and looked around at the few people who had come to watch. Emily was standing in the back of the crowd, and Hank was next to her with his hand on her shoulder. Hank tightened his grip when he saw Jake looking at her and smirked. Emily had tears running down her face as she stared at Jake. He smiled at her and mouthed, "I love you." "Do you have any last words, Jake Briggs, before we carry out your sentence?" Judge Watson asked. He had a bit of a smirk on his face as well. "I didn't kill Carson, and you damn well know it. This is a frame-up." Jake looked back over the crowd and said, "I'll be seeing you, Hank." He turned and added, "You too, Judge." The judge frowned and then grinned. "You'll be dead in a couple of minutes, boy. Nevertheless, I'll be seeing both of you. I'm done talking. Do your worst." Judge Watson motioned to the deputy, who pulled the lever. The trapdoor opened, and Jake fell through, snapping his neck when the rope pulled him up short. Jake felt the trapdoor open, felt the fall, and then felt the noose tighten around his neck. Then he was swinging back and forth. "What's this? That didn't hurt at all. I can still see and hear what's going on. How's Emily?" Hank held Emily up as she screamed and almost fell. "Reckon that's done," Hank said. He pulled Emily forcibly along to his patrol car and left the courthouse square. Late that night, Emily was at her parents' home on her bed, crying. She kept playing over in her mind Jake smiling at her and telling her he loved her. Then she would see the trapdoor open and Jake fall with the rope around his neck. Every time she thought of Jake swinging under the gallows, she would start to cry again. The tension and stress of the day finally got to her, and she dropped off to sleep. Shortly afterward, a blue shimmering light appeared beside the bed. Its intensity ebbed and flowed from dim to very bright. In a few seconds, a figure could be seen in the light. As the light intensified, the figure solidified and stepped out of the light. The figure reached out and touched Emily on the shoulder. She slowly woke up and looked around for a second and then saw the figure. "Jake," she said. Her tone was somewhere between scared and awe. "You can't be here. You're dead. I saw you hang." She had gotten over her fear and was sitting up in bed. "I must be dreaming." "Does this feel like a dream?" Jake, or his ghost, asked as he sat down on the bed next to Emily. He put his arm around her and pulled her to him. He gave her a gentle kiss and said, "I told you I'd always take care of you, that I would always protect you. I came back to do that." The voice was deep and forceful. "Don't worry, Emily. Everything will be all right. You'll be free shortly." The specter held her until she stopped shaking. Then it kissed her again, smiled, stood, and walked through the wall of the house. Emily shook her head, thinking she had been dreaming, but could still feel the pressure of the kisses. For the first time in a month, she smiled. It was the morning after the hanging, and Judge Watson was on the 18th green lining up his putt. It wasn't a very long putt, just about 4 feet. His match with Judge Wyatt Brown from another county was all even, and Wyatt had already made his putt for par. There was 1,200 riding on the outcome of Watson's shot. 2 putts for a tie, 1 to win and beat this old windbag, Watson thought. He made a practice swing and then made a shot. The ball rolled directly toward the hole, but about a foot away, it made a hard turn to the left. It didn't veer or trickle off line. It made a 90-degree turn and rolled about 3 feet away. Watson couldn't believe it. He knew he had made a good shot, and he'd never seen a golf ball make a turn like that. He stared at the ball for several seconds. "Hell of a lot of English on that putt, Tom," Brown said as he tried to keep from laughing. "Don't know as I would have played it that way." Lining up the comeback putt, Watson mumbled several obscenities. "Well, I can still tie," he thought. "Won't win the money, but won't have to pay it out either." He made the short 3-foot putt, and once again, when the ball got to within a foot of the hole, it made a sharp turn, but this time to the right. It rolled about 7 feet and stopped. It sort of vibrated for a few seconds, and then the ball was still. The yelling and obscenities from Watson could be heard all the way into the clubhouse, which was 100 feet away. Several people stepped out of the bar to see what was causing so much noise. Brown tried not to laugh out loud, but this time he couldn't hold it in. Truth be told, he didn't like Watson much. He thought Watson was unprincipled, unethical, and was more concerned with how his office could make him rich and powerful instead of serving the law and the citizens of his county. "Strange putting stroke, Watson." Brown had a wide grin on his face. "That's 1,200 in lunch you owe me." Tom Watson almost screamed, and his face was a deep, unhealthy shade of red. He swung his putter at the ball, digging a groove in the green but knocking the ball into the greenside lake. Then he threw his putter after it. Watson glared at Wyatt as he stomped across the green to his golf cart. Reaching into his golf bag, he pulled out his wallet. He counted out 12 100 bills. He came back and handed Brown the 1,200 and then added a 50. "Buy your own damned lunch," Watson said in a voice filled with anger. Watson climbed into the golf cart and stomped on the gas pedal. It didn't give him much satisfaction, as it was an electric cart and was very quiet. When he got to the parking lot, he threw his bag and clubs into the trunk of his car and drove off at a high rate of speed. "Guess he didn't like losing," Wyatt said and chuckled. He walked 100 feet to the bar and restaurant and went inside for lunch. At 11:00 p.m., Judge Tom Watson was feeling no pain. He wasn't really drunk, but was close to it, thanks to the 3 large glasses of bourbon. He stood to go to bed and knocked over his empty glass on the end table next to his sofa. As he bent over to pick it up, he felt like someone put their foot on his butt and pushed hard. Watson traveled about 3 feet before hitting the floor and slid for another 2 or 3 feet. The judge picked himself up, looked around, and didn't see the faint blue light in the corner. "Guess I am drunker than I thought," he said. "Better get myself to bed. Got to be up for court tomorrow." He climbed the stairs to his bedroom and took a quick shower. Dressing in his monogrammed pajamas, he climbed into bed and laid back. "Hope the damn room doesn't start spinning. Got to get the air conditioning looked at," he thought, as his bedroom had a definite chill. He pulled the quilt up over him. About an hour later, Watson awoke in a sweat. It was not very warm in the room. Whispering voices in his bedroom could be faintly heard. "I can't be hearing voices," he thought. "No, not voices, a voice. What the hell is that?" He heard another noise and sat up. Across the room, his golf bag was standing close to the wall, quivering. As he watched, his clubs, one at a time, levitated out of the bag, seemingly of their own accord. They flew at a high rate of speed and embedded themselves in the wall behind the bed. They missed Watson by no more than 2 feet. A shimmering blue light at the foot of the bed grew brighter and solidified into the figure of Jake Briggs. Watson screamed like a little girl and opened the drawer in the nightstand. He grabbed his gun, a 9mm Glock 17, and shot until the slide locked open on the empty magazine. The bullets traveled through the figure and hit the wall behind it. "You can't be here!" Watson yelled and started to cry. "I hung you. I saw you die." "Yes, you did." "Now it's your turn, Watson," Jake said. The wraith took a step closer to the bed and reached out with his hands toward Watson's chest. The hands passed through the old man into his chest, and the specter made a squeezing motion. The judge screamed, clutched his chest, and fell backward onto the bed. The wraith that was Jake Briggs smiled and pulled its hands back. The figure slowly faded until just the blue light remained. Then it disappeared. Hank stopped by Judge Watson's house mid-morning the next day. The judge had a court session scheduled for 9:00 a.m. that morning and hadn't shown up or called to reschedule. Several phone calls to his residence and his cell phone had gone unanswered. Hank knocked, and then, using a key given to him by the judge, opened the front door. The house was quiet, and there was no answer when Hank called for his cousin. Heading up the stairs, Hank shivered. "Damn, the old man must have the AC set really low," Hank said. He knocked on the closed door of the main bedroom. Not hearing an answer, he opened the door and entered the room. Then he stopped dead. The judge was on his back in the middle of his bed. Damn, rigor mortis has set in. He's as stiff as a board, Hank thought as he touched the body and felt how cold it was. One of the dead man's arms was extended into the air and out from its body. The other clutched his chest over his heart. Looks like he was trying to hold something away from him. Guess I better call Doc Little. Dr. Jeremiah Little was one of 3 doctors in Johnson County, and since Pine Creek was the county seat, he was also the medical examiner for the entire county. He'd been the one to examine Carson when he was killed. Doc Little examined Judge Watson in his bedroom. He made a preliminary cause of death as heart failure. Little based his findings on the clutching of the chest and the slight blue tone of the victim's lips and around his eyes. It was a surprise to Dr. Little. "I'll know more after the autopsy," Little told Hank. "What I don't understand is the golf clubs stuck in the wall or the bullet holes in the wall. Oh well, I'll let you know what I find, and listen, I am sorry for your loss." The next day, Doc Little called Hank. "Well, it was a heart attack, all right. Don't understand it. I gave Tom an extensive physical 2 weeks ago. All tests and indications showed that he had the physique of a man 20 years younger. No signs of possible heart problems. Just goes to show you even healthy guys get heart problems," Hank offered. "The strange thing is that there was actual bruising on his heart," Little continued. "Looked like someone squeezed the heart very hard. Of course, that's impossible. And that doesn't explain the blue coloring around his eyes and his lips. Done my job, and that's the best I can give you, Hank. Have the county send my fee." Hank sat at his desk for several minutes thinking about the doc's report, the golf clubs in the wall, and the bullet holes. "Wish I knew what happened," he said. Then he sat up straight. "By God, I can." The old man put a security system with cameras in the house. Thought someone was stealing his booze. He stood and started toward his patrol car. "Reckon I better get those recordings." The security system was better than older systems, but not as good as the new ones that uploaded data to the cloud. It didn't use tape, it recorded everything it saw and heard on DVDs. The info was kept a predetermined amount of time, and then if the disc wasn't replaced, it would erase it and use it for the next period. Hank inserted the DVD on the judge's computer, sat down, and pulled up the security feed for the night the judge died. What Hank saw was the judge sitting up and looking across the room. The image of the golf clubs flying across the room and embedding themselves in the wall made Hank stop. He replayed that part again. "What the hell?" Hank said. He saw the judge staring at the end of his bed, heard the judge's comments of, "You can't be here. I hung you. I saw you die." Then the feed showed Judge Watson reach out with one hand as if protecting himself while the other clutched his chest. He fell back on the bed and was still. Hank shook his head and sat back in the chair. Who was he talking to? Hank thought. And what is with those golf clubs? Who is he trying to push away? Doesn't make any sense. Thinking another look would help, Hank replayed the footage, but nothing was different except as the video came to the end, 3 words appeared in large, blood-red letters. The words, "You're next." Hank pulsed from eerily bright to dim and back to bright, then they slowly faded. Hank pushed back in the office chair, and it rolled several feet from the computer desk. He sat there, not believing what he'd seen. As he watched, the 3 words appeared again for almost a minute and then faded away again. The room had become colder, and Hank shivered. He stood up, grabbed the DVD, and left the house, almost running to get away. The patrol car starter ground but refused to start. The siren came on and ran up and down the scale, the red and blue lights flashed on and off in a random sequence, and the radio put out very loud static. Hank turned everything off, but they all came back on. Then the riot shotgun started to rattle back and forth in its holder. Hank jumped out of the car and started walking at a furious pace. He walked toward the courthouse square. After about 100 yards, he used his lapel mic to call the sheriff's office. When a deputy answered, Hank said, "Billy, my cruiser broke down in front of the judge's house. Get a tow truck and bring it back to the maintenance department." After a few seconds, he added, "No, I don't want to wait for the tow. I'm walking back." Billy and the patrol car arrived back at his office at about the same time. Billy had driven it back and got out as his boss walked up. "Nothing wrong with your car, Sheriff. As far as I can tell. Started right up and drove fine." Billy handed Hank the keys to the patrol car. For the next hour or so, Hank sat at his desk and thought about the happenings of that morning. He gave Billy the security DVD. "Take a look at this and let me know what you think," he ordered. Billy took the disc to his computer station and inserted it. He sat down and waited for the DVD to play. After a few minutes, he took it out, reinserted it, and waited. Nothing happened. Billy pulled the disc and offered it back to Hank. "Hey, Sheriff, this disc is blank." "What about the golf clubs?" Hank asked. "What about what the judge said? What about the words at the end? Didn't see any of that." "You sure you gave me the right DVD?" Hank grabbed the disc and went back to his desk. He put the DVD in the player on his computer. In less than 3 seconds, the scene in the judge's bedroom appeared. Hank watched the images again. At the end, the same blood-colored words appeared. "You're next, Hank." He screamed in anger, ejected the disc, and broke it into several pieces. "I am going home," he told his deputy. "You got the duty." "But, Sheriff, it's my night off," Billy complained, but he was talking to Hank's back. Sheriff Watson didn't drink very much, but he made an exception when he got home. After 2 very large glasses of bourbon, his mind stopped spinning. He'd been in an uproar since he'd seen the security footage. He took his .44 revolver and put it on his nightstand, then he dropped his belt and holster on the floor. Hank propped himself up against the headboard with a couple of pillows behind him. Emily was visiting her parents. She'd been there since Jake's execution. She was sure that Hank and the judge had framed Jake, and she wanted to leave not just her marriage, but the town as well. But Emily didn't have the courage to leave or file for a divorce. She wasn't sure how Hank would treat her parents if she tried to get a divorce or left town, so she would stay for now. "Damn woman's at her parents," Hank muttered. "I'll put a stop to that. She belongs home with me." Hank didn't really care that much about his wife, but he wanted her close where he could control her. "Gonna make her life hell for cheating on me with that damn Briggs." He took another long drink of bourbon, and just as he started to drop off to sleep, he got cold. Hank reached for the quilt on the bed, but it wouldn't move. He sat up to pull and free the cover, but was distracted by a blue shimmering light at the foot of the bed. A figure began to materialize out of the light. Hank watched as the light solidified into Jake Briggs. It seemed to be holding on to the quilt. "You're dead!" Hank screamed. The wraith Jake grinned at his victim. "I told you I'd see you again, Hank." The sheriff pawed at his pistol and finally picked it up. He fired at the figure until his weapon clicked on an empty chamber. The bullets had no effect. Hank saw his bullets pass through Jake and hit the wall behind him, blowing large holes in the sheetrock. Jake laughed and stepped to the side of the bed. "You can't hurt me. I'm already dead, remember? Now you're going to pay for killing me. Now you're going to pay for hurting Emily. Now you're going to pay." He leaned over, took a pillow from behind Hank, and pushed him down flat on his back. Hank tried to push the figure away, but his arms went through it just as his bullets had. Jake put the pillow over his victim's face and pushed down hard. Hank struggled and pushed at the pillow. After 3 or so minutes, Hank stopped moving. "I hope you come to this afterlife, this whatever it is," Jake's wraith said to Hank's body. "You got off too easy. I want to torture you some more." The apparition slowly faded away. Late that same night, Emily was in a state between wakefulness and sleep. Jake's ghost visited her again. "You can stop being scared, Emily. Hank can't hurt you or your parents anymore." "What do you mean?" she asked. "I made sure he won't bother you again. Go on and enjoy your life. If you would, think of me now and then. Remember, I'll always be here to protect you." The ghost disappeared as Emily came fully awake. Hank's body was discovered the next afternoon by his deputy. Billy had come to check in with the sheriff when there was no answer to phone calls or radio calls. The deputy quickly called Dr. Little, the medical examiner. Little's investigation didn't reveal much more than the one for the judge. Looks like Hank had his oxygen cut off by a pillow. Looks like he was smothered, Little said aloud in his morgue. He had developed the habit of talking to himself while doing autopsies. Can't be. How do you smother yourself? All signs show someone doing this to the sheriff, but there wasn't any evidence of a break-in. Anyway, Hank's pistol was beside the bed and empty, and there were all those holes in the wall. He was a good shot and would have hit an intruder, and Hank had the same blue tone around his eyes and lips as Judge Watson. A copy of Dr. Little's report went to the state, and another copy was filed at the county courthouse along with a death certificate. The report stated a heart attack as the cause of death. The manifestation of Jake Briggs sort of sat on the hillside overlooking his grave. The cold wind that was blowing made the trees dance and sway. Emily, wearing a long black veil of mourning, was visiting Jake's gravesite. She came every 2 or 3 weeks to talk to Jake. Mostly she stood by the grave, but sometimes she put her hand on the headstone and told him about her life. The wraith would listen to her and feel a little peace. She walks the hills and nobody knows, nobody sees, nobody knows but me, it said. Thanks for joining us for this haunting tale of betrayal, revenge, and supernatural justice. If you were in Jake's shoes, how far would you go to right the wrongs done to you? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more eerie stories like this one. See you next time. Thank you for watching. Subscribe on Deceived Husbands for more stories. 6 weeks before our story begins, my trust was unbroken, my heart intact. In college, I met Julie. Our love was a beacon of hope, a promise of a future bright. Yet the facade cracked at a party where whispers in the shadows and a glance not meant for me sowed seeds of doubt. "Julie," I asked later, confronting her, only to be met with evasion. "It's not what you think," she whispered, a lie so frail against the weight of her betrayal. As the silence stretched between us, I found myself asking, "Then what is it, Julie? Can love truly masquerade as something so cruel?" This is the tale of how my world unraveled. Enjoy watching it. My name's Tom Parker, and up until a bit ago I was blind to who my wife really was. Yep, loved her once now, not anymore. I'm about to make her regret fooling me. I should have seen the signs after our Halloween party with friends. That night she came on to me, something she never does. She was all over me like she hadn't been in 20 years. At first I thought she was just a bit tipsy but happy. I hoped it would keep up, but it didn't. Come December, she cooled off, and by Valentine's Day she was annoyed at me for wanting her too much. I blamed myself for missing the signs, but they were there. At a summer barbecue, that's when it clicked. My wife Julie wanted to dress sexy. She was 55, not heavy, with bright red hair. She looked stunning in her outfit, but the moment that opened my eyes was when she walked in after vanishing for a while, looking too calm. It hit me then that the New Year's sex must have been guilt. Her new extra hours at the animal shelter where she worked, the way she seemed distant, the lack of interest in me. So who was it? I couldn't tell, but I decided to dig deeper before confronting her. Julie and I are from different worlds. She's from the East Coast, me from Ohio. We met in college at Ohio State University, not the big Ivy League, but a large state school in Ohio. I was raised in a small town filled with German heritage folks. Julie was from New York, much more liberal than my background. She ended up in Ohio because her folks who met there wanted her to experience some Midwest values. We first met in the library. She was struggling with math and asking for a Math for Dummies book. I've always been good at math, so when I heard her, I had to help. She looked frustrated when the librarian said the book was checked out. I walked over, introduced myself, and offered to help her with algebra. She looked at me funny, but agreed. I joked about being her knight, which made her laugh. She was Julie, I was Tom. We made a deal: if I helped her pass, she'd owe me pizza. But not just any pizza. It had to be from Tony's Pizzeria, a well-known place in town. From there, well, things took off. But now I'm here, writing huge checks to charities, including one we both supported, the Red Cross, trying to find some peace and maybe shake things up for Julie, who'd blindsided me with a side I never knew. In Columbus, Ohio, I made a bet. If you get a C on your test, what's in it for me, I asked. A kiss after dinner, she replied. And what about an A? I was hoping for a real date. Help me with that and I'll let the girls out, she said, her hand still on her chest. My eyes must have popped because she laughed. Get me an A and you can have whatever you want, she added. She didn't trust in her learning skills or my teaching. That's some deal, I thought. We needed a quiet place to study, so into my car we went, heading to Denny's. We took a booth, I got us nachos and told the waitress we'd stay for hours, but it'd tip well. Julie really struggled with math, especially algebra. She couldn't see how letters stood in for numbers, so I began with the basics. 3, 4 equals? She got that. 7, she answered. Okay, I said, imagine the letters as spaces. Why, she wondered. Because every space can have a different value. We use letters to tell them apart, I explained. 3, 4 equals, I wrote down. Think of A as the space we talked about, so what's A in this case? 7, she said. Okay, 3B equals 7, I wrote. What's B? 4, she replied. We use different letters for different values. Here's another 3x6, I wrote. What's X? She mistakenly said, X is 2, mixing up the symbols. We worked through multiplication and division using letters and numbers. Slowly, she began to understand. We stayed until the early morning. By 10, she had her class. I told her to sleep well, don't cram last minute. She thanked me with a cheek kiss and hinted at hoping for an A with a playful look. I wondered, did she mean what I think? Couldn't wait to hear how she did. I didn't get everything promised, but I got pizza and kisses, and things seemed to hint at more. Eventually, she did get an A, and we became a thing. Summer was nearing, and I needed an internship. I hoped for Southern California to stay close to her, but ended up in San Diego at a tech company. It was a drive away, so weekends were our time. I met her family, they seemed to like me. Happy Ed settled their girl. We cherished our weekends together. Back at college, we both hit the books hard. We discussed futures. I dreamed of a big family, but she was into zero population growth. We settled on hoping for just 2 kids. Dream houses were up for debate, too. I wanted something humble, she dreamed bigger. Guess I'd need a good job. We wanted different things from life. She had causes she cared about that didn't quite align with my views, but we agreed to disagree. By senior year, I landed a job in Texas, thanks to my internship. A big move awaited. On the drive back from my final interview, I planned it all, propose to Julie, help her find a job nearby, and start our life in the suburbs of Houston. I pictured our future life vividly married, a home, kids, and all the joys and chaos of a family. After the kids went off to college, we planned to start seeing the world. On my way back home, I made a stop in Chicago. I had my $10,000 bonus with me, ready to buy a ring. I walked into a small jewelry store and picked out a ring set for $7,500, feeling over the moon. I rushed back to Columbus and called Julie. I wanted us to go out for dinner. During dessert, I asked her to marry me. She cried yes. Then I shared my job news. She was happy but worried about Texas's heat. I reassured her it wouldn't be that different from Ohio. We quickly prepared for the wedding and married in New York on July 4th. Our honeymoon was at the Grand Canyon. By August 1st, we were setting up our first apartment. I began my job, and Julie got work through a temp agency, hoping to find something bigger eventually. Life had its own plans, though. Just 10 months in, we were ecstatic to learn a baby was on the way. We bought a cozy Cape Cod-style house, not big, but perfect for starting our family. Then came Emily Jane, or EJ as I called her, with her strawberry blonde hair and blue eyes. She was our perfect little mix. Her grip stole my heart instantly. Things changed after EJ was born, especially our intimacy. Julie seemed to have lost interest, and discussions about it grew heated. Hoping for a boy next, I tried everything. Our doctor suggested it might be postpartum depression, while a therapist thought it was PTSD from a tough childbirth. Despite therapy, progress was slow. Eventually, I focused my love and attention on EJ, and Julie stayed home, volunteering instead of returning to work. 20 years later, though our home and jobs were great, I sensed something off. At a party, I needed to escape, using a headache as an excuse. I managed to get us home early. Alone in our room, I strategized on uncovering the truth. Julie's phone conversation from downstairs reached my ears. She mentioned not being able to return to someone named Mark because of my headache. Mark Johnson, a recent arrival to our circle with his family. Plans began forming in my head on how to deal with this newfound revelation. Emma was a bit older than EJ, yet they were still pals. She was off to Texas State University but stayed at home to save money on dorm costs. Then there is Mark Johnson. I can't believe it, he sold tech to my business. We bought a lot from them. I'm going to get back at him, ×3, sneaked back to my room. People say revenge should be cold. I don't think so. I like quick revenge. Get it done fast before they see it coming. I had to make a plan. That's what engineers do. We see a problem, we plan to fix it. First up, I had to stay away from Julie as much as possible. Couldn't hide my anger around her now. Tomorrow, Saturday, Julie's day to help at the animal shelter. I had to be up early, not all good, but well enough. She wouldn't stay home for me. EJ, now in her last year of high school, could help if I needed. Later, Julie came in, turned on a light. I yelled out it hurt. She turned it off quick, whispered she'd sleep in another room and hoped I'd feel better. I made a sound back. Next morning, Julie checked on me, but I fell asleep again. She picked her clothes and left after telling EJ to watch me. She went to work. I got up, showered, and dressed. Downstairs, EJ was making breakfast, pancakes, eggs, bacon. Hey, Dad, Mom said you had a bad headache. Didn't think you'd be up yet. Want breakfast? Yes, please. You're amazing, EJ, she smiled, love in her eyes. She's my everything. Had to sort this mess with little trouble for her. It's her last high school year. Next year, college. We talked about school, boys, sports. Then I asked, chosen a college for next fall? Not sure, Dad. I want to do engineering but don't want to upset you. Why would that upset me? I asked, proud my kid wanted to follow my path. I'm thinking of MIT. Wow, our old school, that's awesome. No, Dad, MIT, I was a bit let down. It was the other MIT. Still, it's a top-notch engineering school. Could get used to it. That's great. They're one of the best. Proud to have you graduate from either. Sent in your application yet? 4 weeks ago. Hope to hear by Christmas so I can plan. I'll see if I have any contacts that can help. Thanks, Dad. After we ate, I said I had to work. Had things to do. But first, my kid. Checked the bios of all engineers in our company. None here went to MIT, but 2 in other plants did, including one boss. I knew him, would call him Monday. Now to plan my revenge on my soon-to-be ex-wife and Mark Johnson. He'd be easier. Spoke to some guys at work. Yes, on Saturdays some were from tough backgrounds, a few with pasts. Asked them who could help with a prank. They said talk to Tony. Perfect, exactly what I needed. Tony wasn't in on Saturday, so that had to wait for Monday. Made a list for Monday, speak to Ben in New Jersey for EJ, then to Tony, then HR. Check on cashing out for a lawyer. Heard horror divorce stories, wasn't going to be me. But today, had more to do. Went to the bank, left only $15,000, opened a new account and got a new credit card just for me. Paid off my old card and dropped its limit. Then called a private investigator. Needed to know Mark's schedule. Set up a Monday meet. Went to an electronics store, bought cameras and recorders. Called Julie around noon, acting normal. Sorry about last night. All good now, I forced out. She was busy at work, said she'd be late. I had hours to get my stuff done. So back home I went. Wiring the house took me 3 hours. Lucky for me, I hung out with friends all day. Teens don't stick around home much. The system worked great. I set it up to record on a new laptop hidden in the basement. No one ever visits there, not even for laundry. Julie insisted on moving it to the 2nd floor, costing a lot, all to make her happy. Now I needed to rake the leaves, hoping to be halfway done by the time she got home. Around 6, she popped out to say she was home and ask how I was. Fine, just raking leaves. Should finish by 7, I said. She offered to help after changing. Soon she joined me with her rake and we cleared the yard together. I kept quiet, not wanting her to guess anything was up. By 6:30 we were done, and she started on dinner. After a quick shower, I threw on an Ohio State University sweatshirt, curious about her reaction. Downstairs, she was setting the table. Dinner will be ready soon, she noted. Perfect timing. I went out to drag the leaf bags to the curb for Monday's pickup. 20 bags down and still more leaves. Back inside, I washed up and sat down for dinner. A simple meal, yet every little thing seemed to trigger me. I smiled and ate quietly. She talked about her busy day at the shelter. I half listened, reacting minimally. After eating, we watched TV for a bit until I excused myself to bed early, hoping to shake off a lingering headache. I was beat. Next morning, I was off to church. Julie passed this time. It had been rare since summer. At church, the sermon on forgiveness had me wrestling with my feelings toward Julie. Post-service, a friend inquired about my Halloween. I shrugged it off. EJ had mentioned a headache too, but I had other things on my mind. At home, Julie had lunch waiting. Her cooking had improved vastly since we married. I remembered the early days of questionable sandwiches. Post-lunch, she realized she forgot to cook some hamburger, but it led to a light moment between us. I then mentioned I'd check my deer blind in the woods, surprising her since I hadn't hunted in years. In Texas, the hunting season opener is a big deal. It gave me a day away, planned that evening. Went by without much happening, which was fine by me. Next day at work, I hit the ground running. Messaged Ben in New Jersey first, arranged a meeting with HR, and caught up with Tony for a private chat. Tony agreed to meet in my office, where he joked about me being the boss. Despite the jest, it was clear he respected my know-how around the place. I was pretty out of the loop when it came to work stuff, and even more in the dark about things at home. Clueless, yeah, that was me. But then I hit up Tony. I needed a chat about something personal, and I needed it to stay just between us. Nowhere else for real. Only if it was something huge like planning something wild would I spill. I'd even cover for you, no sweat. It's nothing too crazy, at least most folks wouldn't think so. Go on, he said. I'm listening. I'm thinking about hiring a hooker for... He jumped in before I could finish. Whoa, thought you weren't into that. It's not for me, I told Tony. It's a sort of payback for a former pal. Why get him a hooker if he's not your pal anymore? He's messing with you? No, just call it revenge. End of story. You'll get pics to hold over him? Nope, pics might happen, but not for blackmail. I need a specific kind of hooker, one who looks like the girl next door. You're looking to mess up his home life. That might happen, but what I really want is for him to catch chlamydia. Could that work by Christmas? That's rough, Tony said. But I'm impressed. Just don't make me mad. You think you can do it? Yeah, I think so. The hard part is finding a hooker okay with getting sick for a bit. I can throw in 2,000. Enough? Not sure. She'd have to stop working for a bit. Okay, how about 3,000? Toss in 1,500 for you to seal the deal. Deal. I'll get you the details later. Get your girl ready. Tony left, and I leaned back, grinning. Time for phase 2. As the go-to engineer, folks always hit me up for my take on stuff. I flipped through my contacts, looking for the right one. Then I found it XYZ Tech Company. We hardly bought from them, but that might change. I rang them, asking for a sit-down ASAP. They were thrilled. Could do it today. Happy with my plan. My CEO, Brad, popped in. Morning, he said. Morning, Brad. I was going to set up a chat with you later. Got time now? Sure, let's chat, he replied. Heard you were in this Saturday. Anything I need to know? Kind of what I want to talk about. It's personal, barely related to work. You've been with us nearly 25 years. We're family, and anything you need, just say so. I spilled the beans, asked him to keep it hush, and he agreed. Can't believe Julie did you dirty. Makes me look at my own marriage. How can I help? My ex-buddy. He's the sales guy at ABC Tech. I helped him get in here, but now I want to switch to another company, especially if they match or beat ABC's deal. That's your call, Brad said. Who you thinking of? XYZ. We've bought from them. They're solid. What do I tell ABC? Say we're not happy with their rep and XYZ promised us better deals and quicker service. That's if today's meeting goes well. I'll let you know, I said. Thanks, Brad. Feels good to have backup. Brad left. I was smiling, plans shaping up. Next step, a divorce lawyer meeting on Tuesday. Then I checked my emails. An HR message said I could drop by, went straight to it. At HR, Sherry asked what was up. Told her I needed to cash out my 401k. She warned me of the big tax hit unless I moved it to another retirement account. I knew, but my hands were tied. What do I need to do? She helped me fill out forms, still trying to change my mind. Before leaving, I asked about vacation days. 6 weeks total, she said. Perfect for my plans. I should get the cash in my new account in 10 days. The XYZ meeting went well. Brad, Mr. Smith, and the tech guys were there, asking solid questions. The XYZ rep handled it all, leaving us sure we were making the right move. After the talk, I asked Brad to wait until next Monday to speak to ABC. He agreed, giving XYZ time to prepare. Post-work, I met up with a private investigator. I needed him to tail Mark and learn everything about his day-to-day life. Come Tuesday, I had a chat with my lawyer. Learning a divorce might drag on for months since we're in a no-fault state, meaning proof of cheating wasn't needed. Worse off, a divorce would hit my wallet hard. Imagine that, begging during marriage and then getting financially dinged at divorce. I told the lawyer I'd ponder over it, whether I could forgive past mistakes for my financial well-being. If Julie kept up her antics, though, I'd push for action by year-end. The lawyer also mentioned out of 3 possible judges for our case, 2 were very sympathetic and often leaned towards the woman in financial matters. If it went that way, I'd end up funding Julie's lifestyle unwillingly. Could we move past this? I deeply cared for her. If she opened up by Thanksgiving, maybe I could forgive. I'd give her chances to come clean, yet also enough rope if she chose to stray. Meanwhile, I planned to avoid intimacy since Halloween. Come Friday, Tony dropped by asking for a chat. We nailed down the plan with a woman who'd play the part by next Friday, ensuring she'd be contagious, yet symptom-free for a while. Thanksgiving weekend would be decisive. After checking with the PI, Mark's habits were predictable: a drink at a hotel bar, post-work, then home. The week passed with endless leaf-raking. If only my neighbors weren't stealthily adding to my pile. Sunday brought church with EJ. My daughter sensing something off, but only got busy at work as my explanation, sparing Julie any worry. Going into the holidays, lunch with Julie and EJ went as usual, the latter excited about a shopping trip. Alone at home, I hesitated but checked my laptop. Eventually, hearing Julie's half of a conversation with Mark reignited my anger. Monday, I confirmed Friday's setup with Tony at the hotel bar, painting a believable backstory. Brad, reaching out to ABC, hinted at us withdrawing our business, sending them into panic given our significant share. Promises of a new sales rep and matched quotes followed, setting the stage for a crucial Wednesday meeting with them, aiming for a better deal. This tale of intrigue, deception, and a quest for justice unfolds amid the complexities of marriage, betrayal, and the pursuit of a fair outcome rooted in love and conflict. After our chat, it was clear the boss was mad about how we'd been treated by the last sales guy. We told him how the guy acted like he ran the place and thought we'd always stick by. We did decide to keep using them, but just as a second choice. Now and then it was time to leave, so we did. I rang my private eye to tell him to hang out at the bar on the next few nights to see if Mark turned up, especially on Friday when I had another plan in mind. Plus, I wanted photos. By Thursday, Mark must have gotten a talking to. He surely was told he lost our account. That's a big dent in his pay. When I got home, I told Julie I was off to clean my rifle in the basement for the weekend hunt. Down there, I got a call from the PI. Mark was at the bar, had 3 drinks, sure signs he was worried. Back upstairs, I asked Julie about dinner. She seemed far away. I had to ask again. She said we'd order pizza. Fine by me. I said I'd get my hunting stuff ready. When the pizza came, it was just us eating. EJ was out. Julie seemed off, but I left it alone. After we ate, she asked if work was okay. She heard from Mary that Mark was talking about big changes at our place. I told her not to worry, that if something big was up, I'd know. I mentioned Mark was probably stressed about his job since they rely a lot on our business. I reassured her I'd keep an eye out at work. But we had the next day off for deer season, so it was just us engineers and maintenance crew trying to improve things. She worried about what we'd do if I lost my job. I brushed it off, said maybe she could talk to Mark. I promised I'd chat with Brad at work. She hoped I was right. Mary was worried too. Next day at work, we were all hands on deck since production was halted. Busy till about 3:00 p.m., then I checked in with my PI. He was all set for Friday. He'd rigged a room with cameras if Mark took the bait. A couple $100 can go a long way. Thanks, Bob, I said, planning to meet him after my hunt the next day. I had to prepare just in case, so I called the bank about a home equity loan. No strings attached, just in case Julie and I needed it. When I got home, Julie was still out. I checked my laptop, nothing new. Hung up my hunting gear, grabbed a beer, and just thought about life. When Julie walked in, I tried one last time to connect. Suggested we spend some quality time upstairs. She wasn't up for it. Said maybe after hunting. I joked about being back by 5 to avoid careless hunters. I joked about dinner knowing how she'd react. EJ came home, we had dinner, and I brought up an old cooking mishap of Julie's for a laugh. But she wasn't amused. It was just us again, watching TV, the night winding down as usual. At 8:30 p.m., I spoke up, saying I'd hit the hay so I could wake early and head into the woods at dawn. I thought, why not ask one more time? Do you want to come with? It was still early, but knowing my luck, if I slept now, I'd be wide awake at 3:00 a.m., tossing and turning. Well, no harm in trying, right? So to bed I went. Come 4:30 a.m., my alarm buzzed, and by 5 I was out the door. I found myself at Denny's, ordering a big breakfast. As I waited for my meal, my mind wandered back to the past 20 years with Julie. Where did we go wrong? How did it come to this? Could I ever forgive her? Was my love for her strong enough to get past this? When my food arrived, I barely touched it. Hunger had left me. Instead, I just sat there, lost in memories of better days. Had those days now passed us by? An hour and a half later, with most of my food still on the plate, I stood up, left a 20 bill on the table, and left. I drove aimlessly until I ended up by the Brazos River, looking across at the other side. I pondered over my nearly 20-year stay here. I hadn't achieved much. Never had I visited Mexico's capital. This needed to change. I promised myself to visit every state capital and to explore Europe with my free time soon to increase. It seemed doable. Before long, I headed to work. Walking in, I saw the maintenance crew busy with their tasks. There was a real chance I wouldn't be around in a year's time. My marriage was on the brink, my job was unstable, and my daughter EJ would be off to college soon. There'd be nothing left here for me. I spent the morning in my office, lost in thought until it was time to leave. Even catching a glimpse of Mark's antics couldn't lift my spirits. As expected, Mark, ever the womanizer, had taken a recently unemployed housewife to our setup room. I couldn't help but wonder if karma would catch up with him. Immediately, in 2 weeks Thanksgiving weekend, I planned to be out of town on an emergency. Mark's method was always the same: listen, empathize, then offer a comforting solution. Watching them, bitterness filled me. I had once been Julie's protector, her knight. Now those memories brought only pain. Their act was convincing. She deserved an award for her performance. As they kissed, the urgency between them was palpable. Mark was praising her skills, completely unaware of the act. Their encounter escalated until she skillfully made her escape, leaving Mark frustrated. Bob and I watched the playback, sharing a laugh at Mark's expense. He got what he deserved, Bob noted. In this tale, heartache and revenge twisted together in the life of a man coming to terms with the end of his marriage and the change it would bring. It's a reminder of how complex relationships can be, and the lengths some will go to find solace or retribution. No way, more than you think, Bob, way more, I told him. I took the DVD, said thanks to Bob, and told him to send the final bill. Don't need your help no more, got what I need. Got back home around 4. Julie was busy cleaning, changing beds, and washing clothes. Wasn't busy at the shelter today? Didn't think you'd be back till 5. Was going to start dinner. Did you get Bambi? She joked. Nope, but saw a deer. Tried to get close, it got mad and ran off. Glad to hear that, she said. So was I. It was something to see, I laughed. Going to clean my gun and store it for next year. You're not going back out? Still got 2 weeks, she wondered. Nah, not feeling it. Maybe next year. Went downstairs, put my gun away, didn't use it, so no cleaning needed. Took a moment to check my laptop for anything new, saw her getting ready for work, then coming back at noon. Maybe it was a slow day at the shelter, or she had plans knowing I'd be out for hours. She made a phone call, wondered who she was talking to. "Hey, Mary," she said. It hit me how she didn't seem guilty, chatting with Mary like nothing was wrong. Made me wonder if Mary knew about it all. Heard her talk about a slow day, not focused because of what Mary said about Mark and his job. In my head, I figured she was really thinking about Mark. Listened more. No, he's out probably missing shots at deer. Not bothered by it. He misses a lot, she said. Hit me hard, calling me clueless. Maybe at home, but not at work. She continued the chat. Yeah, might hit the leaves again. Love nature, but it's a pain. Might just move to a condo next. Changed into my old college sweats, hoping to remind her of better times. Wondered if she'd feel guilty for what she's doing. Could I forgive her and keep this going? Wasn't sure. Kept thinking, why her with Mark? Been months since we were close. Went outside, needed to think. If she talked before Thanksgiving, maybe I'd forgive her, but lots to fix, especially trust in our close moments. After bagging leaves, went in. Julie asked if I wanted anything from the store. Just a loyal wife, I muttered, but just said, no thanks out loud. Checked the laptop again when she left. Heard her talking to Mark. Hey, lover, just thinking of you, she said. Chat went on till she thought I was back. This chat confirmed it was my marriage done. Nearly 20 years, and what do we have? Thought of our daughter, the best part of us. Next morning at work, asked about the new guy from XYZ. The ladies liked him, said the last one was a creep. Told them to always speak up if something's wrong. Called the bank, surprised by how much my house was worth. Bought it when prices were low, still had good equity despite the market. Talked to Brad again, shared what the office lady said about Mr. Johnson making them uncomfortable. Brad said it wouldn't happen again. I agreed, glad to move past it. He told me Mr. Johnson was being let go today. When he said that, I told him we might need him again soon. I smiled at that thought. I didn't want to upset Mary, but even if she didn't know it, her husband was already hurting her. Hey, Brad, can we talk about what's next for me at work? You're not leaving, are you? He looked shocked. I'm thinking about moving to the Toronto plant or maybe the New Jersey one, but I'd rather go to Toronto. Once my divorce is done, I'd love to come back here if that's okay with you. I think we can make it work, but I want you back, he said. I chose Toronto because I wasn't sure about having to pay alimony, and being in another country might make that harder. Also, Brad, I'd like to be let go on December 15th. I have 4 weeks of holiday and 10 personal days I want to use. Then if I go to court, it should look like I'm not working. I don't want to do anything wrong, so if I need to be fired and then rehired in Toronto, that's fine. I'll lose my place in line, but it's worth it. It'll mean Julie needs to find a job. After 20 years, I'm not sure if her degree is worth much. A lot has changed. In HR, this would be payback number 3 after the sickness and the divorce. Now, who's clueless? When I got back to my desk, I called Ben in New Jersey to ask about MIT. He said it was all set up, and she'd get her letter in a couple of weeks. Great. One more thing to tick off my list. I called MIT's office and got through to the Dean of Admissions. I told him I wanted to pay my daughter's tuition and other costs up front. He was pleased and said, sure. Once she's in, we'll give you the total. I thanked him and shared my contact info. Another task done. I decided to wait to talk to Brad about my Thanksgiving plans. I might use that time to see the place and look for somewhere to live. I spoke to my lawyer next. I said, if we go through with the divorce, I want her to be served on December 20th in the afternoon at our place. I asked if they could do it at that exact time. It was a Saturday, and I said I'd pay extra. They said it was possible, and just to let them know a week in advance. Then I called a flower shop. I needed to know if they could make a delivery on December 20th at a specific time. Can you promise that? I asked. Yes, we can. Just give us the address and 3 days' notice, but there's an extra charge for a special trip. That's fine, I said, adding I'd call early that week if needed. I was still unsure. Could things still change? Thanksgiving would be the deciding time. I asked them about getting 20 red roses and 1 black rose sent in a special box. They said a week's notice was enough, and they could use a paper box and make it look nice. Okay, thanks. They'll call next month with all the info. Another tick on my list. I'd send the DVD to Mary on December 20th. On Christmas, I'd email Mark a photo of himself that he wouldn't like, hoping he'd enjoy his gift. For Julie, I wanted to make a photo album of all our good times. I might seem mean, but I wanted her to feel the loss. I thought about asking EJ to go see MIT. I knew she'd miss her grandparents, but they'd likely be busy with Julie. I'd tell EJ we were leaving on the 20th, but not to tell her mom. I'd wait till after Thanksgiving to say anything. That weekend would show if our marriage could be fixed, or if it was beyond saving. At lunch, I asked Brad if I could take the afternoon off. He agreed. See you tomorrow. I'd really miss working with him. I hoped I could return soon. When I got home, Julie wasn't there. Maybe she was at work or with him. I checked the computer, no calls, so she was likely at work. Now is a good time to sort through my stuff, all the things we keep thinking we'll need someday. I started with the filing cabinet. Sure, she wouldn't notice if I sorted out old papers. I cleared out a lot of junk from 3 drawers. I left the important papers for later. Those would go in next. I found the boxes of our old photos, the ones before everything was saved digitally. So I put all those papers in the filing cabinet, thinking it would be neat for when I began that project. I figured I'd have to sift through our computer for photos to print, or maybe download them to get them printed on good paper. I wanted this to look sharp, no doubts there. Then I headed out to the garage to sort and box up my tools. Julie wouldn't spot those either. I packed them in boxes and hid them in the basement. This way, when it was time to move my stuff, it would be a simple haul upstairs, then out to the garage and into my car. Around 4:30 p.m., I decided to grill some steaks. It was chilly, but I really like fresh grilled steak. I also grilled corn and asparagus. I tossed 3 potatoes in the oven to bake, and by 5:30 both Julie and EJ were back. "You made dinner? When did you get home?" Julie asked. "Work was slow, so I left early," I told her. I knew this would make Julie worry even more. We sat down for dinner and Julie said, "I got a call from Mary. Mark lost his job today." Lost his job, I thought to myself. More like he was fired. "That's awful," I said aloud. "What's he going to do?" "Look for a new job," she replied. "Good thing Mary is working," I added, just to nudge Julie's worries a bit more. "Are you sure your job is okay?" "You did say it was slow," she asked, nervous. "As far as I know, we're fine," I reassured her. We spent the meal listening to EJ share about her life. I treasured these moments, knowing they'd be less once I was gone. I planned to keep in touch regardless. The days passed quietly, and then it was a week before Thanksgiving. During dinner, EJ had a request. Mom, Dad, Kelly asked if I could join their family for a ski trip in Colorado over Thanksgiving, she shared timidly. "When would you leave?" "Wednesday afternoon," she said. "Well, your grandparents aren't coming till Christmas, so it's fine by me if your mom agrees," I said. The next day I spoke with Brad, my confidant. "Brad, I need your help for Thanksgiving weekend," I began. "Need time off?" he guessed. "No, I need to set up a scenario to test Julie," I explained. I wanted to create a fake emergency that would take me out of town, giving Julie the chance to show her true colors. "You think it won't work out between you two?" he asked. "If she's honest before Thanksgiving, maybe. If not, well, it's over," I said. Brad agreed to help with my plan. Driving home, part of me hoped for Julie's honesty. I truly loved her and didn't want to lose what we had. I suggested we have dinner out on Tuesday, seeing as we'd missed Thanksgiving together. EJ was excited, feeling guilty about missing Thanksgiving. I managed to book us a table at Le Petit, an upscale place, for Tuesday. It felt like a last celebration, a final good meal together, mirroring what we had before any of this turmoil began. I let EJ and Julie know we had plans at 7:30 the next night. EJ texted me right back, but it took until the afternoon to hear from Julie. I wondered what she was up to, now that Mark didn't have a job. I had a few guesses. On Monday, Julie wanted to know if I could be a job reference for Mark. I said yes, thinking I'd get calls from places wanting to hire him. I was eager to tell them what a mess he was. That Tuesday, we went out to a fancy dinner. Julie worried if we could pay for it. I told her we could afford it, wanting to treat us. We spent the evening talking about the good old times, how EJ was doing in sports and school. It was nice to remember the past together. EJ got ready for her trip to Colorado, staying with Kelly. I offered to pay Mr. Barnes for the extra cost, but he wouldn't take any money, insisting it was a gift. I gave EJ some spending money and made her promise to call me when she got back. She was curious about the news I said I'd have for her then. EJ hoped whatever was troubling me would get better, which showed how sharp she was. We got home and quickly went to bed. I stayed awake, thinking while Julie slept peacefully. The day before Thanksgiving was slow at work, as it usually is. Most left early, but I stayed until 4 since I needed to support the team. When I got home, Julie had a visitor, Mary, who was worried about her husband, Mark, feeling down and not even interested in being close. They thought finding Mark a job would help. Later, I overheard Mark planning to meet Julie when I was gone, thinking I'd be at the office. It made me more suspicious. Thanksgiving Day, we kept our lunch simple but nice. Then a work call came, pretending I needed to go to New Jersey for an emergency at work. Julie found it hard to believe, wondering why now. I explained it was urgent because of a big order we had. I had to make sure everything was perfect. I packed quickly, making sure my laptop would record anything happening at home while I was gone. Julie helped me find my things, not knowing my real plan. I packed for all occasions, making sure I was ready for anything. Julie watched me, puzzled by the amount of stuff I was taking. I pretended it was all necessary, hiding my true feelings and plans. I had to be at the factory by 6:00 a.m. Catching a flight at 2:00 a.m. wasn't for me. "Well, I'll miss you," she said. I looked back at her. Her words sounded nice, but her face didn't match. If Julie did what I thought she was doing, those words meant nothing. I tossed my bags into the car. I went back inside and asked Julie if she could drive me or if I should leave my car at the airport. Driving me meant she'd have to pick me up on Monday. She didn't like driving in Houston traffic. It was a nightmare, especially near the airport. But driving me meant I wouldn't have my car to come back early if needed. "I'll drive you. It's Thanksgiving. I want more time with you." She really was trying to make it sound sweet, I thought. "Okay, we should head out soon. What to do until then?" I gave her a look. "No time for that," she replied. "Maybe when you're back." Or maybe not, I thought. "Well, relax then," I said, grabbing a beer. I sat down, she did too, but chose a chair across from me. "Sorry I have to go, but it's important," I said. "I get it," she replied. "I'll be alone all weekend." I told her to call Mary, catch a movie, get dinner. She needed a distraction. I asked if she was helping at the shelter again. They were trying to get pets adopted out by year's end that Saturday. Sorted. What about Black Friday shopping? She wasn't interested. "Just curl up with a good book then," I suggested. "She'll find something to do," I was sure. The drive to the airport was just small talk. "Just drop me here," I said at the airport. She stopped, I got my stuff, and didn't even get a hug goodbye. A quick kiss, and she was off. We didn't say "I love you." Inside the airport, I waited, hoping maybe she'd return. She didn't. I rented a car, too expensive but necessary. I found the rental car, loaded up, and headed to a hotel near home. I wanted to watch the house, see who came and went without being too obvious. The car I got blended in. By 9:00 p.m., I drove by, no one had come. The TV was on inside, maybe Mark was staying home this Thanksgiving. I went back, called Julie at 10:00 p.m., saying I got in and was going to bed early for the early start. "Miss you," she said. "Miss you too," I said back, but I missed the person she used to be. The next day I slept in, something I hadn't done in weeks. Put on casual clothes and drove by our house. Mark's car was there. Could it be Mary's, though? I needed to check her bank for her car. If it was there, then I knew, and it was. Tomorrow I planned to sneak in while Julie was out. I spent the day seeing how Houston was slowly improving despite its issues. I didn't call Julie that evening. If she wanted to talk, she'd call. She didn't. Saturday, I slipped into our house while Julie was out, found the videos on her laptop, and took them with me to watch at work. My heart sank seeing the footage. Julie in lingerie I bought, never worn for me, her and Mark together. She never liked being close with me, but with him it was different. Her words felt like a heavy blow. I thought hard about what went wrong between us in bed. When we first got together, things were wild, and our honeymoon was just us together, non-stop. We pretty much lived on room service food. Even the first year was all about being close, sometimes more than once a day. Even when she was carrying EJ, we couldn't keep our hands off each other. But after EJ was born, things took a dive. I get that a new baby eats up time and you're tired all the time. But even when our little one had a sleep routine, the spark didn't return. I kept wondering what I did wrong to make her not want me anymore. Then I saw it on the screen. They were already going at it. He was dominating, just pounding away. "Doesn't he go hard like this?" he said between grunts. "Never," she answered. Then he switched it up, put her on her hands and knees, and went at it again. This scene felt too familiar, almost rehearsed. He was hard on her and she was loving it, making noises I hadn't heard in 20 years. Maybe I wasn't tough enough for her. I had every angle covered her face from the headboard camera, a shot from the closet, and an overhead view from the ceiling fan. I couldn't watch anymore. I paused, printed the evidence, and shut everything down. I guessed Mary wouldn't be too happy to see these photos. Come Monday, I'd have to speak with Brad about moving. Leaving this place would be hard. It had been a huge part of my life. Back at the hotel, thoughts flooded my mind. Julie no longer wanting me, but okay with being treated poorly by another. It hurt. I bought some beer and tried to drink away the pain. The next day, I was a mess. I realized my marriage was a lie. The only good thing was EJ. I hadn't eaten since yesterday, so I went back to the same diner. I needed to stay low for another day. While eating, I plotted my revenge. I would serve her divorce papers in the most shocking way, on Christmas, when her parents were around. The picture collage from the zip drive would be the final blow. EJ called, asking about my plans. I picked her up and she immediately knew something was wrong. "We're getting a divorce," I told her, explaining the betrayal. EJ was shocked, but understood. We couldn't pretend nothing was wrong. We agreed to act normal until I exposed everything right before her grandparents' arrival. "Can't you fix it?" she hoped. "No, honey," I sighed. "It's done." I spilled the truth because EJ knew something was up. She's smart and needed honesty. Despite everything, we'd get through this. She believes I have no clue, but I caught on last Halloween. That's when my headache hit. Who's doing it? It's not someone I know, right? Well, it'll come out soon enough. Yes, Dad, it's Mark Johnson. Does Mrs. Johnson know? Not yet, I said. Wow, Emma will be crushed. She adores her dad, she said. Yeah, she really looks up to him. No, Dad, it's like she can't get enough of him. That's why she's going to Texas State to stay close to her dad. I had no idea. This will hit her hard. Make sure you're there for her, I said. She might not want my help, Dad. It's my mom he's caught up with, right? Maybe Mr. Johnson and your mom have something real, I suggested. I'm going to start the divorce right after our Christmas, I told her. That seems harsh, Dad. I know, EJ, but it has to be before the new year. I need to do it for myself. Silence fell. Now for some good news, I said with a smile. Good news? I could use some after that shock. You're going to get a letter from MIT soon. What, really? Your dad has friends, but you earned this. I just heard early. I'm also covering your tuition, room and board, and books for 4 years. How can you afford that? She asked. That's where my friends come in. Don't worry. Just focus on studying something you love. I am going to be an engineer like you. Who's obsessed now? I joked. Dad, I love you. So keep this happy feeling for the next few weeks. Don't let your mom suspect anything, I said. What about visiting the campus on December 20th? You'll miss your grandparents for a bit. That's perfect, Dad. I'd rather not be around Mom when you tell her. I parked a bit away in a rental car so Julie wouldn't see. EJ took her things and went inside. Julie welcomed her. EJ acted perfect. Did all women deserve Oscars? Julie had fooled me too. On Monday, I spoke with my lawyer. Divorce papers would be delivered on the 20th. Then I called the florist for a delivery on the same day. I wanted 20 red roses with a black one in the center. The note would say, 20 good, 1 bad. Look under the lid. I made sure they'd drop it off right at 3:55 p.m. the next day. I paid extra for this to happen, telling the lady I couldn't tip the driver. I gave her $150 for him. Home felt good that night, and I slept deep. Woke up at 8 and started a big breakfast. EJ had coffee going, eggs, waffle mix, bacon, ham, sausage, biscuits, and gravy were on the menu. My dad used to say, "Eat up, you don't know when you'll eat again." Julie seemed to feel that one deep. After breakfast, we chilled. I planned to grill steaks at 2, with family time being key, especially around Christmas this year. We shared old Christmas stories, and it was a mix of sweet and sad feels. At 1:15, I got potatoes and a sweet casserole baking. By 2:45, steaks were sizzling on the grill. EJ joined to toss salads together while I minded the grill. Lunch was great, and we just enjoyed being together. Around 3, we started on gifts, the big ones last. My gifts were the basics, but EJ got extras from her mom and me. Then EJ got a slightly used laptop from me, ready for college. Julie gave me a box next with a new briefcase inside. My old one was ancient. I thanked her, knowing I'd use it well. Then it was Julie's turn. She found a photo album from me, starting with a pic of the algebra book that kicked off our story. It had our whole life dates, milestones, vacations, EJ's achievements, ending with an empty page saying, "More to come in 5 minutes." As EJ and I tidied up, it hit 3:54. Right then, the doorbell rang. I nudged Julie to get it, then left. The florist handed her the flower box. She found the roses, the black one, and then the card. The message stunned her. Just as she took it in, a woman walked up with papers and a card. It hit Julie hard. Divorce was all the card hinted at. She passed out. The woman dialed 911, and we left. From what I heard later, Julie was okay physically after the medics came. Her parents showed up, worried, found her shaken with divorce papers next to her, and a tale unfolded from the photos and flowers. It was a huge shock, a story pieced together from many sides, ending a chapter suddenly. Why did you do it? Her mom was lost for words, amazed by what her daughter did. Her dad picked up the box with flowers, saw the black rose, and then the card. He searched and found the lid under the coffee table. His wife saw his shock. She looked at the lid. Her eyes grew big. She turned to Julie and said, "You didn't?" Julie started to cry. They moved everything to the kitchen table. They spread it all out. The lid was flipped so no one saw the picture. Her dad pulled out papers from an envelope. As her mom said, "You both can make it through this, but you have to work hard, Julie." Then her dad said, "I don't think they can, dear." He gave her a look. He showed a paper that seemed like an old hospital bill. Then he stared at his daughter. "You had surgery to not have kids after the baby was born?" Julie's eyes popped. She yelled and fainted again. Her mom cooled her down with a wet cloth. When she woke up, she seemed lost. Her dad said, "Julie, you're my daughter and I love you, but I'm not happy with you right now. I can't believe you did this to your marriage, cheating, or the surgery." He might have forgiven cheating. Women do weird things close to 40. He glanced at his wife. She looked away. "But he won't forgive you for the surgery. He wanted more kids. Remember, Marge, they tried for years. You took that chance from him. They looked over divorce papers." Her dad asked, "Is this right? Your worth seems to be about $90,000? Julie said, "No, Dad. We have investments, cash, and the house. It should be over $700,000. "Well, this paper doesn't say that. He must be hiding money. We need a lawyer to find it." And so they did. I was in court in late January. I had to leave my trip early. I stood in front of the judge with my lawyer. The lawyer told me the judge usually favors women in these cases. She asked, "Looking at your accounts from November, you had over $700,000 in everything. In your divorce papers, you claim it's about $90,000. Why the difference?" "Your Honor, $250,000 of that was for my daughter's college at MIT this fall. So we're down to $450,000. Then $300,000 went to charities we like. That's $100,000 each, leaving about $90,000. My lawyer handed her the proof. I added, "The $90,000 is a guess based on our house and other stuff we own. She keeps her car and me mine." You sent $300,000 to charity? Asked the judge. And did she know? Yes, on December 11th, I asked how much to donate. She said not 11,000. I guessed 50,000 or 75,000. She said, let's do 100,000, so I did 100,000 each to Planned Parenthood, ASPCA, and the Red Cross. I meant 100, not 100,000, my wife yelled. The judge listened. Planned Parenthood and the ASPCA were her favorites. She couldn't ask for the money back. The judge had to move on. Before anyone else spoke, I said, Your Honor, I never had an STD. Maybe ask my wife the same. Turns out she talked to Mark since my Merry Christmas email with a picture of her with someone else. The judge noted, cheating isn't why we're here. We're looking at where the money went. You paid for your child's college early. We can't make charities return the money, so he'll split the $90,000 and add $40,000 a year for her for 3 years until she finds a job. My lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client lost his job before Christmas. He's jobless, so we asked to pause support until he finds work. Okay, said the judge, support starts when he works, ends in 3 years. I smiled inside. She didn't say anything about working in another country. My lawyer asked, Your Honor? Yes, she asked. If we could end our marriage now, do both agree to this divorce? My lawyer said I did. I looked at Julie, her eyes mixed with hate and sadness. Her lawyer said she did too. She knew we couldn't fix things. The choice I made about not having more kids was too much, so it had to be. And we had to split what we earned. My lawyer said it was the quickest divorce he'd seen. So after a month walking through Europe, I started my new job in Toronto. I told them I'd stay for 3 years, maybe wanting to go back to Houston after. I also promised to work super hard to make it the best place in the company. I left my marriage with not much money, and so did she. But I could live with less. And in 15 years with smart choices, I hope to save up to $1 million. 15 years later, things didn't go as planned. I did go back to Houston after 3 years. I left the Toronto place in great shape. I came back as the boss of the plant. Brad had retired and said good things about me. Julie went back to California. She's with her parents, helping them as they get older. She went out with some guys, but nothing serious happened. I wonder if it was because of her or them. Maybe when she shared why her marriage ended, they got scared. I'd like to think that. I'm married with 2 kids. One's an engineer working in New Jersey. They did great on their internship there, liked by everyone. They got a job offer after graduating. Mary made sure Mark paid a lot in their divorce. I guess he had enough to move to Lansing and work selling used cars. I didn't keep in touch with him, but he didn't have much after Mary won big. All she needed was a lawyer. I retired, living in the small house my wife and I bought. With $2 million in the bank, I'm happy. I wish I'd made different choices earlier, but here we are. All's good. EJ teaches at MIT and lives in the Northeast. We still talk, and she's doing well. And there you go, the true story of my life. Thank you for tuning in to this roller coaster tale of betrayal and revenge. What do you think about the way he handled the situation? Would you have done the same? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more shocking stories on Infidelity Exposed.